noch 10 Minuten. Machen die Sound. Ich komme hier rein.
Ladies,
Thank you.
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today. We are shortly going to begin our program. Please welcome to the stage our MC, Lesia.
First and foremost, thank you very much, Mariana Sadowska, for opening our event with this beautiful music. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends, my name is Lesia Ohrysko and I represent the RISE Coalition and I will be your host for tonight. Welcome and warm welcome to our event called Reforms and Resilience Governance for Ukraine's Survival. You know, we've decided to hold this conference and to have this title because we not only think that the R in the URC should be replaced from recovery to resilience, but first and foremost because we do believe that it is Ukraine's resilience in the security sector, in the economy, in all of the reforms that are the only prerequisite for us Ukrainians to win this genocidal war. And with every new assault on Kharkiv, with every new airstrike on Sumy, on Odessa, and on 1,000 of other smaller and bigger cities and towns and villages of Ukraine, we think that discussions about reconstruction become increasingly inadequate. And on every occasion, we Ukrainians are trying to deliver one simple message, that there is a very strong correlation between the war and reconstruction. And in order to pay less in the future for reconstruction, we have to mobilize all possible resources now to win this genocidal war. So while we will not be talking about, from my perspective, the most important topic for today, which is Ukraine's security and defense, but I would like to urge everybody to approach every single topic that we will be covering today is exactly from this security lens, that it is Ukraine's armed forces that help us today to stand here and to talk about a country that still exists on the political map of Europe. Now, what we will be discussing today is Ukraine's resilience. And we will be discussing different parts of Ukraine's resilience, and we will be opening with one that is no big surprise to you, which is Ukraine's civil society. We will then delve into another part of Ukraine's resilience, which is Ukrainian public sector. No matter how criticized it is from many sides in Ukraine, but it is the Ukrainian civil servants that also stood the ground back in 2022. They didn't leave the country, they didn't collaborate with the aggressor. Many of them actually showed up on the morning of the 24th of February to do their job. So had the public sector been indeed so much eroded by corruption, I don't think we would have a free independent Ukraine now. And that's why, of course, we will be also discussing yet another topic, which is corruption in Ukraine, but we will be handling it from a slightly untraditional perspective, which is the disinformation angle, and how much our enemy is also trying to exploit this narrative in all of the Western societies, but also in Ukraine. And finally, when planning Ukraine's reconstruction, when thinking about a modern, prosperous Ukraine, we cannot but talk about an additional part of the resilience, which is the financial resilience. And that's why our last part will be devoted into thinking of how we're doing with our budget, how are we doing with the Western aid to Ukraine, and what are the future prospects for Ukraine's financial resilience. Now, my opening wouldn't be an opening without thanking all of our partners. And we had the absolute pleasure, and you have the absolute pleasure, to be in an event which has a staggering 13 co-organizers and sponsors. And a warm applause to you. And I would like to thank, alongside the RISE Coalition, the German Marshall Fund, I would like to thank the Deutsch-Ukrainisches Büro, the Institute for Analytics and Advocacy, Transparency International, and the Professional Government Association that have been wonderful partners. And of course, I would like to thank our generous sponsors, the OSF, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, USAID, UK Aid, and Open Contracting Partnership. It has been quite a journey, I have to say, in order to coordinate and make this event happen, but I really would like to thank all of you for your flexibility, for your generosity, and a true partnership. Now, thank you very much. Now, my very last point, I was talking about different parts of Ukraine's resilience, and I think one is of a particular importance, and that is Ukraine's culture, Ukraine's identity. After all, we Ukrainians are fighting to preserve Ukraine's identity. And for that, we actually thought to introduce music, part of Ukraine's culture, as an equally important part of this event to all of the other discussions and panels that we will be having. And for that, I have the absolute pleasure to introduce to you again Mariana Sadovska to the stage, who is a prominent Ukrainian musician and author who so talentfully combines contemporary Ukrainian music and the country's tradition. Mariana, your first composition.
And we will start with the piece which is Requiem. It's in memoriam to all who pay the highest price of resistance and highest price of fighting for our freedom.
Мамко моя, не лай мені. Мамко моя, ой, не лай мені. Лай мамко, буде. Якби мені, синку, доню, не шаль, якби мені, синку, не жаль. Ти ж на моїм серці лежав, ти ж на моїм серці
Thank you, Mariana. This song, Pливе Кача, turned into a requiem during the Maidan times, during the Revolution of Dignity of Ukraine. And the Revolution of Dignity turned into one of the brightest manifestations of Ukraine's civil society over the last decade. And with this, we are now transitioning to the first big part of our conversation, which is civil society is the resilience pillar of Ukraine. And I would like to welcome to the stage Irina Bilouz, Deputy Chief of Party of Engage Pact, a USAID project, to the stage. The floor is yours.
Hi everyone, it's my great pleasure to be here today and welcome.
Mike.
I have a good voice. Yeah, hi everyone. Do you hear me? Oh, it works. It's my great pleasure to be here today and welcome you all at this event, and especially looking forward for the discussion of the first panel of the civil society. Ukraine's civil society is an important stakeholder in all state processes. Civic activists, including USAID engaged partners, were the first among those who joined the ranks of the armed forces of Ukraine, defending the future of our country on the front lines. Similarly important, the civic activists support the state on home fronts, playing an active roles in all of the processes related to reconstruction and recovery. At Engage, we proudly support civil society organizations working both nationally and at the local community levels, including those which are working in the deoccupied territories. Therefore, for us, it's very important to provide and recognize the participation and the high involvement of the civil society in Ukraine's recovery actions. Our partner organizations, several of which represented here at today's event, include Transparency International Ukraine, Institute of Analytics and Advocacy, who are actively involved in international monitoring processes and development of the policies on reconstruction. SAVE-ED and Institute of Innovations SAVE-ED helps actually the school to rebuild the underground schools, while the Institute of Innovation Developments create different tools for electronic citizens' participations in reconstruction. At the regional level, we support organizations such as the Kyiv Anti-Corruption Center, which actually ensure the monitoring and transparency of the reconstruction projects. The Ukrainian civil sector is inspiring and impressive with its resilience, endurance, and strength. We are proud to be a part of this event, which is initiated by the civil society sector, which actually demonstrates an active role of the civil society and, more importantly, the ability to take responsibility for Ukraine's recovery and resilience. I wish all of us a good and productive discussion today. Stronger we are together. Stronger we will rebuild and thrive. Thank you.
You welcome them on stage.
Our next moderator, Mattia.
Welcome everybody. Please, my panelists, come and join me already. We'll try to keep this as lively as possible. Welcome, and I'll introduce the panelists shortly. There was a small change of plan. We also had the German special envoy for the URC tasked to speak in front of this panel, so he might join us later. We'll keep an eye on him, but I first want to say thank you to the panelists for joining me. Thank you for joining us, especially from Ukraine. And Inna Piluska, I was just about to call you the last panelist. That's a good start. Now we want to keep this lively, and I wanted to say thank you for not just to the 4 Ukrainian panelists, but for all of you. I see a lot of Ukrainian familiar faces in the crowd, and I think it's been intensive. 3 days of pre-events and URC itself for many of you, and I see tiredness. So I promise to keep this as lively as possible. So we have about 30 minutes here on stage before I also want to engage you, because we have a lot of smart and bright people in the room, and I want to give you the opportunity not necessarily to ask questions, but to at least engage the panelists by sharing your insights of the URC in this week, because this session is designed to give the officials who are also in this room feedback, and we will hear from the officials later on, and they will be properly introduced, but we have German officials and Italian officials whom I look very much forward to listening to. But now turning to the civil society itself, we have with me 4 distinguished activists and experts from various fields. And we, as the German-Ukrainian Bureau, built this panel together with the Renaissance Foundation and the Open Society Foundation and PACT, USAID Engage. And we thought about what different perspectives we can engage of those who attend the URC. Some even spoke at the URC as official panelists, and we wanted to let them share their insights, let you listen to what they have seen and taken away over the past 2-3 days. Maybe, Inna, I begin actually with you, because you're the furthest away from me, and you're a veteran of Ukrainian civil society. You, as I learned, you are, of course, the Deputy Executive Director of IRF, one of our partners, the International Renaissance Foundation, and you've been in this position for 13 years. And, of course, IRF is one of the, if not the most important partner, among others, of the Ukrainian civil society. And you actually attended all 3 URCs in Lugano, in London, and in Berlin. So why don't we start with you, and why don't you share some of your thoughts, and some of your insights, maybe some of your main takeaways. I'll give you that for 1 or 2 minutes, and then we'll engage the others as well.
Generous. Thank you so much. So indeed, 3 URCs we can compare. Last year in London, when we were talking with the team which was preparing the next URC in Berlin, one of the things we really wanted to make clear is that civil society needs to have not just a space at the table, but really an important participation as a panelist, as a contributor, as people who come to the table with a lot of experience, with the projects they're already implementing, with the communities they are able to represent and inspire and drive forward. Well, that happened. So I think it's important that we had the civil society people involved. We always need to have more. And of course, I would love to see more space in terms of meaningful contributions, but that will come. I'm sure that is something we will be talking on about next. So a good event. For me, it's one which is intellectually awakening, challenging in ways of stimulating, the one which has a lot of opportunities to connect, to meet people, establish relations, which then last beyond the immediate couple of days that we were there, and also an event which calls and inspires the follow-up. So certainly we will have follow-up after this one. For me, from the way it was organized, having the 4 pillars, well, it was a good idea, I think, because it allowed us to focus. It allowed to bring in more specific conversations on the stage, but that had a downside, which is I wish I could be at 4 spaces at the same point, and I'm sure I was not the only one who actually was that. So recovery, reconstruction is a holistic effort, and it's important that we do not distinguish and like put human dimension sitting there and European integration of communities sitting over there. It never happens like that, hopefully, in the real life, and when it does, it should not. So holistic approach and more linkages and more cross-cutting dialogues, more cross-cutting planning, which needs to take place. Deliverables. So the conference had the deliverables we were hearing during the closing session. I'm not going to enumerate them all. I will mention 2, which for me are very important. One is the Skills Alliance. We have been talking about the importance of upskilling, reskilling, bringing in new opportunities, new capacities to the communities, to women. That's a great opportunity, so that we probably will finally address the issue of the gender pay gap, address the issue of representation of voices also in communities. So the Skills Alliance, certainly something I would be looking at. And the second one it's got the name, and it's the Alliance for Gender Responsive and Inclusive Recovery. Please pay attention. I'm sure that if other things, I do not know exactly how they will be evolving. I'm sure this one got a lot of leadership. It's got a lot of energy behind it, and it has a very specific objectives, and this is going to happen, and I'm really looking forward at that one. And then the last point I want to make is about continuity. It's very important to see the...
Let's come to continuity after, because you're already jumping ahead in a good way, because I was about to also ask about the takeaways and the deliverables and the continuity, so we're going to stop that in a second. I wanted to go on, but the special envoy, Jean-Pierre Fröhlich of the German Foreign Office joined us, and he was supposed to open the panel. So we're going to interrupt our thinking, and I will just give our dear and trusted partner, Alexander Sushko, briefly the floor from the podium to introduce Jean-Pierre Fröhlich.
Thank you. First of all, again, Ina already sent you greetings from behalf of International Renaissance Foundation. For us, this is a big move ahead. I mean, with this Ukraine Recovery Conference, we have found the way how to build really strong partnership between the civil society officials and business in the course of preparation of this conference. And this is, in my opinion, this is a significant step ahead as we had the civil society at almost each panel, and Ukrainian civil society was represented in its various forms and segments. It was really some sort of proportional representation, which I have never seen before internationally, by the way. So it's a great pleasure for me to indicate this progress that we have seen Ukrainian civil society in its real richness and variety. And with these words, I would like, first of all, to thank to the German government and the German Foreign Ministry for their very strong and sustainable leadership with this conference and with these principles of engagement of the civil society. And with these words, I would like to introduce Jean-Pierre Fröhlich, Special Envoy for Ukraine, whom we know for many, many years as a person dedicated to the cultural linkages between Ukraine and Germany, with his numerous musical performances across Ukraine and many other things which he has been done for Ukraine and in Ukraine and for Ukrainian-German connections as well. So please, Mr. Fröhlich, the floor is yours. Yeah?
Yeah, dear friends, it's a big pleasure being here. Thank you so much for the invitation. Sorry for being later. The roads were partly still closed, not because of the Ukrainian #1, but because of the football championship. So it's a big pleasure being here, and I'm really delighted for inviting me to speak here. I mean, I would like to thank all of you for the success of this conference. This is not our success of the government, it's your success as civil society, of all the partners who participated. It is not only within the government an endeavor of the Federal Foreign Ministry, we did this together with the BMZ. Christine, thanks for this great cooperation. It is also a huge interagency cooperation within the government. Excellent work by the BMZ, Ministry of Economics also heavily involved. So from the beginning, Christina's team and we were saying one thing: we will not have 2 conferences, we will not have 3 conferences, we will have 1 conference where everybody comes together, where all stakeholders are involved, and where no one is left behind. So, and I think this is a big achievement of that conference. Everybody is talking about that, so I don't need to repeat that here. I myself took personally care that no one is left behind. I get huge requests also, and BMZ as well. The last minute, we tried to accommodate everybody and to bring everybody in and to have everybody participating in that debate. So I'm really grateful for your input. I mean, it is obvious that when 20 years ago I came for the first time to Ukraine on my first posting, it was obvious that the real reform driver and the real driver for modernization of Ukraine is the civil society. And I'm so grateful that you were so engaged in that conference, and it is really your achievement, it's not our achievement. So thank you to all of us, and thank you also to all the organizations involved as partners at our URC, but also in today's event. These are partnerships for a long time. Mattia and his team, German Marshall Fund, and of course Open Society Foundation, who is doing an excellent job in Ukraine for years and years. And so this is something really where we are so grateful. Thank you.
Yeah, Ukrainian resilience also means flexibility, so thank you for this change of plan. During that, now I want to turn back to the panel. And this is really about gathering the first takeaways before we also open the floor to you. So maybe let's continue actually with you, Natalia, in the order of you sitting. Natalia is not just a great friend of the German-Ukrainian Bureau, but also a very special person because she's not just from Kyiv. Yeah, we have a lot of the reform debates and civil society debates in Germany, sometimes only focused on those contexts we have in Kyiv. That's why we are all the more delighted to have a strong civil society partner from Chernihiv, from the city, but who's also very active in the region. So Natalia Drost, you're the head of the board of the Dobrochin Center, and you're also a veteran, if I may say so. You're in this position since, what, 2002, if I'm not mistaken?
No, 2007.
So, thank you for the correction. But Natalia, like you already networked with the Italian Special Envoy, you told me, but what were your main impressions from this conference? How did you, coming from Chernihiv, how will you return to Chernihiv with what impressions from Berlin?
Yeah, thank you for having me here, because not so often local organizations have a floor, have an essay. It's unfortunately still a point that should be improved during the next conferences. But the good point is that we see balance between local, regional, national dimension, as well as civil society. Now I'm talking about local communities because now great part of our work is supporting local communities. So before the full-scale invasion, our main sphere was local democracy. Now, we embedded local democracy into reconstruction and recovery process. So we facilitate local communities in designing their future, plans, their strategic ideas, plans, whatever, how to communicate with citizens. Because everyone talking about bottom-up approach, but how in reality and who can do this? Because a lot of attention were given to local level this time during the conference. We were talking about their resilience, how they are adaptive, how they are heroes doing great jobs, providing all the possible services, schooling, medicine for their citizens. But what about their equal access to resources, to capacities? Even if we do not, probably it's my subjective opinion, but during this conference, I didn't hear that we have different types of communities. We should not compare a community in a frontier region in Chernihiv, Sumy, Kharkiv, or somewhere in Lviv. If we, for example, talking about 20% of Ukraine facility plan for local authorities, do we differentiate that we have different types of local authorities? Will we have different mechanism? Because only training, it's not enough. If, for example, if they have 2 people in their department instead of 10. So local civil society, now it's partner for the local municipalities in this survival, in this survival mode for resilience. Because yes, we are planning recovery, but it's not priority now. Priority is defense, survival, resilience, and then recovery. That's why recovery is now on the shoulders on civil society sector. And sometimes we've heard from some international experts that we overstep our responsibilities as civil society. But now it's time to do this, because the local authorities, they are too busy to address these actual needs. So that's why we are now partner of local communities, and we are promoting their accession, and it's already the next topic of the next speech, but now it's time really to be united in defense and really united in resilience, and civil society should be more, as we talked already with Italian representative, should be more represented in the next conference, especially diverse, not only central level, but local as well, as at this conference, local communities also were representatives. Thanks.
You. That's already a task for the Italians. That's one homework. And we'll get to more in a second. But actually, Alyona, I want to turn to you, Alyona Kruzik. You were one of the 4 people on the stage who actually spoke at the URC, so not just attended, but also spoke. And you are with the fund, you're the co-founder or the co-director? Co-founder of the fund Smilivi, which is an amazing organization, and I'm sure you will share a little bit more. But you are a volunteer initiative with over 2,000 volunteers restoring private houses and apartments. So this is someone who literally does recovery, and I'm very much looking forward to your reflections on the URC and how you, as someone who does local reconstruction, goes home to Kyiv and to your regions where you're active. So what are your main takeaways?
First of all, I was in London previous year, and this year I want to mention that civil society was much more represented than previous year, and we are looking forward to be more represented next year also. And I had a lucky chance to be a speaker in one of the panels, and I was actually the voice of these small hromadas that had not such much attention on the international level because of their capacities, because of their lack of people to maintain this recovery projects. And we, as a local civil society, NGO foundation, we were managing to do, like, we repaired 12 schools previous year. We were that managers that helped them, like, to repair these schools. And what I want, like, to mention also, like, what is wasn't so good this year, and I want to see it next. We were coming here to have some more cooperation with European NGOs, with European civil society, and I was, like, seizing the up, searching for the people with whom I can talk about some partnerships. And there were a lot of civil society from Ukraine, but much more less represented civil society from European Union, and we are talking about that we are, as Ukraine, we are going to European Union. We need more, to cooperation between communities, cooperation between governments, and we also want cooperation between civil society, and to be more civil society from European Union to be our guidelines, because I was in Poland study tour, and they talked about how they were managing civil society, played a great role of providing, engaging people from Poland, how they will enter European Union. What is European Union? Why we're changing this? What's about the law? So we can take this experience from the local NGOs and bring it back to Ukraine. So yes.
That's very important feedback. I love that. It's also constructive to think about how we include more European experts, NGOs working on Ukraine, with Ukraine into the next URC. I think it's worth to mention that this URC has been the largest ever, so I think the organizers also try to invite as many as they could. And also on the Romada side, I just want to mention for those of you who haven't attended the main event, that there was a huge exhibition space for companies, but also Romada. So maybe next year a space also for exhibition for the NGOs, which had a small space, but maybe even bigger next time. But now I want to turn to Anna. Anna Novostad, you've been patiently listening, and I want to turn to you now. You're the you're the founder of SafeEd, which is also a very important NGO because you reconstruct schools. And we, as German-Ukrainian Bureau, we did interviews in Chernihiv, writing a study, and we talked with some of your beneficiaries, and they were literally at awe of what you do with them, for them. And I'm particularly interested to hear from you because you were also for a long time working in the education sphere as a Minister of Education, and you have years of experience also on the government side, so not that you organized the URC yourself, but you also had the perspectives on the other side. So maybe, Anna, you can share your perspectives. What are your main takeaways, given that you focus on reconstruction educational spaces? What are your main takeaways?
Good afternoon, everyone. Maybe I'll start with a bit of a different thing. Just a few hours ago, Russians hit with ballistics Kryvyi Rih. 6 dead, 11 injured, and the count is rolling. And this is daily life, and our daily life, our comfort of life got a little bit better sometime around winter 23, when we've got German Gepards and Iris T, for instance. All who live in Kyiv, well, I live in Kyiv, so I hear that more often. We can distinguish between Patriot, Gepard, Iris T. And this is about our comfort of living. And I just, being here, I see a lot of Ukrainians, but I assume those who are not Ukrainians are Germans. I just want to say thank you for that support. it's life-saving, and maybe it saved some people in Kryvyi Rih today, I don't know, but still 6 people are dead. And Lesia has that word on her plate, Taurus, you know. We will be sitting here in Berlin, in Rome, in other beautiful capitals, discussing first we discussed reforms, now we discuss recovery. If we do not have long-range missiles to stop the source of it, we will discuss at some point a different R, which is resurrection, you know, because it's impossible to equip the huge country like Ukraine. Israel is the size of Kyiv Oblast, right? It's impossible to equip the whole Ukraine with anti-missile. That's why for us the only way is to destroy the source, and for that we need long range. Now about URC. This is my first URC, and I haven't been to London, to Lugano, but I heard a lot, I read a lot, and watched a lot online, and I'm glad that this year URC got more practical, more down to earth, especially from the Ukraine's government side. Last year it was all about, I think it was very dreamy. It was very, you know, we were dreaming about this beautiful big recovery that might happen sometime, you know, everything green, cashless, so on and so forth. I think it was a bit laughable thing, and I'm happy that this year everyone, every single governmental official, every single local community official was starting with weapons, because this is the only thing to ensure our recovery and resilience and economic stability. One thing actually that I have to start at first is that I do not take for granted what Germany is doing and what Italy will be doing next year, because, well, we might be all so, you know, skeptical and this was bad and this is bad, but we shall not take for granted that this is in general happening. And I was amazed by the list of speakers that we had at this conference. For instance, I attended my sphere, my educational sector. Minister of Education of Germany, head of World Bank, head of UNICEF, Polish governmental officials, Max Planck Institute director. And one thing that made me awe was that most of them were saying, we have a plan. We have a plan how to help you. And my next point is, I'm not sure that we in Ukraine, especially in the governmental side, are having a plan. And this is one thing, you know, I'm not criticizing. I'm just kind of bringing us to a question like, what are the expectations about their results and outcomes? Is there a capable receiver to actually implement all those coalitions, for instance, that Ina mentioned? Because the main driver should be the government, and we are lacking, well, this is the first time in our history we are having such a huge number of acting ministers, and those who are not acting have a little mandate, and that's a challenge. And thus it brings me to my next point and final one. The local communities. Most of our colleagues mentioned that they have been represented this year, and I totally agree, and I applaud and thank, for instance, to ULEAD and GIZ, who brought so many communities. But I think, and I saw a lot of the communities that we was brave working, Izium, Balaklia, Mykolaiv communities, but these are people who have never been to events like this. They are very new to it, but they did not have a mechanism how to actually mix and mingle, apart from just listening to the panels. And I think this is something to kind of fix next year, because local communities have to be those who have to offset for some of the incapabilities of the central level. Thank you.
We do one more quick round here and then open up, so you can already prepare your thoughts or statements. And we have also, Ukrainian government was addressed more indirectly several times. We have officials and peace here in the room, so you can also respond to what you've heard shortly. But Ina, you already started with the deliverables. So I ask myself, you know, many of you have traveled 20 plus hours, some even 30 hours from Eastern Ukraine. So the question is, going back, what, you know, are your main, what are your next steps from the URC? You already started thinking about the process between the time between this URC and the next URC, but thinking going home, what will be your thinking and your actions about the process that is in between these two conferences?
The panels, some of those I missed, and I really feel that would be important to make these linkages between what we have been discussing here, like what's on the table at the international partners' offices, what is it that communities need, what kind of capacity they need to prepare well for the next URC. It's a lot of work. We saw a lot of work happening And thank you, each and every one of you who came with the presentations. Thanks, of course, to the German government for the leadership, to Ukrainian partners, Ukrainian government for doing their job. But we need to have this well prepared next time, even better, even more of those things. How to actually operationalize what we heard today? How do we invest in capacity to absorb all that? How do we invest in capacity to partner, plan the projects which would be scalable, which we could be able to bring to the next URC and have all this recovery fair? I just loved it. It was really very useful. But you could see who had more time and resources to do it in advance well, who's there, like knowing how these things can be done. And then the civil society actually can help those who were a little bit, less benefiting, because that was the first time for them. So the next, and the brief one, we spoke about continuity, and I think it's absolutely essential that the German government passes on to the Italian government with the process which have been in place. There was another deliverable which was mentioned, and I'm sure there were many more. There was a mention of the Business Advisory Council, which is being formed, which will be in conversation with the organizers, with the donors, with the private sector. Very important. We were thinking at some point, and actually this is a question, I'm seeing Thomas in the room, and also colleagues, about the civil society advisory establishments. Maybe one, two, several, maybe some exist, maybe some need to have the issue of representation and issue of functions addressed. So what is it that it's going to be doing? So it's not a decorative body, it is an entity which really moves things further. For me, this is kind of a continuity, so we'll do reflection, we'll do the analysis, we'll do probably several rounds of discussions. Today, the value of this, and again, thank you for having it and organizing it, is that it's so fresh. We will have it in a couple of weeks, we will have it in a month. We had after London last year, we will certainly have after Berlin and before where we are going to Italy the next year. But this is something which needs a space for us to plan and reflect together. And I'm sure we will be much better and more prepared every time we do this reflection together. Thank you
so much. The more post-analysis needed, and this is not the first or not the last, it might be the first, but not the last of the reflections. I think more is needed on each of these different dimensions. But Natalia, from your perspective, going back to Chernihiv, really, what are the things you take away? I asked you this slightly, like, I want to paraphrase it, but going home, what are the next steps that you take away from this URC, other than the context to our Italian colleague?
Yeah, I was just thinking when I will be back home, so the local communities that we are collaborating with were asking, so what was the point, what will be the benefit for us, how you could support us in reaching this. So for us, these conferences, they seem not as a goal, but as a summarizing point where we can gather together and just summarize where we are now, what should be done, lessons learned, best practices for example, and the most of our activities will be aimed at empowering local communities and civil societies to be able to absorb all these promised financial resources, to be able to train, because it's also you have free people. If someone would even provide any alliances, any trainees, even you need to have this physical person and free one to go somewhere and to be trained. Yeah. It's a luxury for some others, indeed. So it should be combination.
Human resources is a big issue for the Romadas, and to invest in them, I think that's also one of the takeaways. Sorry to interrupt.
So it's, I will continue just one more thought. So we will just continue our job, emphasizing on EU accession, good governance, local democracy, and bringing citizens into this recovery process. This, what we are doing now, we will continue and just doing more and better, especially we would like to have more partnership for regions, for small and more local communities with the international one, as well for civil society. Because, for example, if we make any delegation coming to Germany or whatever, Poland, we try to combine local authorities plus civil society, because only in collaboration they could do very good project and then scale up them. Thanks.
Thank you. Aliona, I want to turn to you, and because you already said that you lacked European NGOs, but still, or more European NGOs. But going back to Kyiv, I believe, right? What are the practical outcomes? What are for you the next steps, very briefly?
We have ideas that we need more recovery agents for this small Hromada. Recovery agents is the people who are probably from NGOs or in the Hromadas who can manage all these recovery projects, who can be those delegates to European Union countries and somewhere, who can bring donors to the small Hromadas, because not all Hromadas are in this. Someone has good local administration, someone has not so much good local administration, but all the times that I was like on the URC and was like listening to speakers, I was thinking about the grannies who has no houses now, and while we're speaking about strategies, capacity, etc., she doesn't have still this like house on her land. And I think that this local level, we can, while there is a strategy, big plans, facilities, etc., we can cooperate on the local level to give our like people who have damaged houses or have no houses to live this, to survive this period before we will make more scale, recovery, etc.
Okay, thank you. Anna, before we open the floor up to you, there was some expectations about the URC, is this talk about, paraphrasing you, I think, or someone from you, talk about a tomorrow that might never come, was it, or did something practical for you and your safe ed come out of this? So was it worth for you to come all the way from Kyiv?
For sure worse. I didn't have any expectations, maybe that's the beauty. But it was an incredibly rich networking, and of course there is a lot of follow-up on that. But I would probably reiterate Ina on the thought about listening, rethinking, analyzing what's been said by different stakeholders, especially those who are shaping our technical assistance agenda, World Bank, EBRD, all other IFIs, GIZ, you name it, in governmental organizations. For one simple thing, for one for me to understand, how do they think about our recovery? I explain what I mean. For instance, I work in education. We are not a construction company. We renew access to education. We work in 70 communities along the front line, along the border with Russia, and what you can do in Chernihiv and Kyiv area is completely different from what you can do in Pechenihi, Starai, Saltiv, Marefa, in Kharkiv region, or Derhachi, right? For instance, there was Braves, we did a lot of underground schools, and this is the only possibility for Kharkiv. And this is also about recovery. It's not about rebuilding a school, it's about rebuilding access to at least some service. So to me, it's important, what do partners think about the recovery? And I think it's also important for the next year for us to have a definition. What kind of recovery are we talking about, and how is it kind of time-bound with regard to where we are in the war?
Fantastic. Now, up to you. You don't have to necessarily ask questions. You can also share your reflections. And I already see 3, 4 hands. Let's begin with the Ukrainian guest in the very back, and then turning to Marie-Louise Beck, Ivana Klimpush-Sinzadze, Ukrainian MP, please.
Thank you. It's thrilling to be here among you. May I do a small polling here? Could the representatives of the Ukrainian civil society raise their hands in this hall? Okay. And the representatives of international organizations, institutions, and we are almost talking to ourselves. And this is something that is important to take as a lesson learned for the next event. We need this voices of this viable, critical civil society to be heard in a much wider audience. And if we can amplify these voices in the next rounds, I think that that's exactly what we should do. That's one thing. And the second thing, I would like to echo everything what some of the ladies have mentioned, and I notice you are just providing some gender balance, Mattia, there. That I do not know, and maybe that's a question to everybody right now, whether we Ukrainians have ensured that we delivered the message of urgency, that we delivered the message of survival, and not that much of a recovery at this particular moment. The situation is fluid. The situation is changing. Russia does have the upper hand at this particular moment, so more weapons, more capability to preserve ourselves, to protect ourselves in order to have the economy running and in order to be able to defend ourselves. I'm not sure whether the urgency was a clear-cut message from this URC.
That's a very important point. Thank you for underlining that. Here in the very front, please, in the very front, the blue.
Thank you very much. Ivana and I sat together this afternoon, so I can go on with her idea right away. Being a German, I know that Ukraine needs optimism, because if you don't have it, you won't be able to go on fighting. But also you need realism. And unfortunately, our Western societies love to spread illusions about their strength, about their decidedness, about what they are really willing to give. And the problem of this conference, for somebody like me who has been in politics for almost half of my life, now is working closer to NGOs, the problem is that this conference, starting with the word recovery, gives the illusion that it's ready to start. It's ready to start with ecological projects, with sustainable development, with sustainable energy. I don't know.
Marie, we are running out of time.
Okay, you're running out of time. And of course, this conference did not talk about military. But at the moment, we are talking about first aid questions. It's not a recovery conference, it's a first aid conference.
Okay.
And at the moment, we all know it's about military supply. And this is what will be most important for the next year, I guess, also.
That's an important message to the Italians. Thank you so much. Let's gather two more and try to be short. We have here and in the back. Please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Alexander. I'm representing the community of bridging managers. Our community fosters the business connections between Germany and Ukraine and creating the new business opportunities. So we are NGO and we are helping Ukrainian businesses. This is our main mission. And what kind of thing I would like to share that we are talking about the military sector, we are talking about the rebuilding of schools. You are doing an amazing job. Thank you very much. But we don't need to forget about to develop the small and medium businesses, which like a driver of all economies in the world. And our community would like to close the gap between this knowledge of people, because when we started to develop our communities, we are communicated with different clusters in Ukraine, and we see that the gap in the knowledge is very big, and we need to share our expertise. And very short question to our speakers: that do you hear something about our communities, about the people who is in Ukraine, about their needs in business activities, not only?
Okay, that's a good question.
So.
Thank you so much. One, maybe. Okay, I see two more. Two more, but be short, and we'll cannot answer all of that, but I want to take as much as from the floor as we can. So two more. The gentleman and the lady to the right, please. Keep it crisp.
Thank you. I know that you have only 4 minutes time. Imagine we meet next year at the URC 2025. What would be your dream? What should be happening in Ukraine in the next 12 months?
That's a great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one more. I think it was the lady here.
Hello, Oksana Potapova, feminist activist and a researcher. It's a question and a reflection. As part of being a fellow of the Vidnova program that ran for 6 months here in Berlin, I conducted research among different civil society organizations, grassroots activists, about issues and challenges and barriers to recovery efforts. Many of them spoke about the forms of donor support that comes with conditions, that comes with short-term funding that only sponsors activities, not sustainability of the organizations. That seems to be a cross-cutting issue. My comment and my question to the panelists, you are all running either donor-funded programs, you are running projects that are also, I'm assuming, 100% funded by international funding. It will be an issue, okay, I'm assuming, maybe not, but donor funding, my point is donor funding will remain an important source of support of civil society. And the conditions of this funding right now are depleting people's labor, people's capacities to do actual work. Do you see this also as an issue in your teams? In your organizations? Do you get this feedback from the grassroots organizations? And if so, do you see ways that we can together try and change systemically the models of funding of civil society, given how important their role is for playing a long-term role?
Okay, thank you so much. I'm afraid I have to cut you off here. We're out of time. I cannot take any more questions. Sorry. Thank you. So we're out of time, but I want to give each of the panelists at least a very short opportunity to respond. So there was a very good point about the urgency. So you can choose whether you want to address the sense of urgency, whether it was sufficiently present at the conference, or I give you a second option by the gentleman, whether imagine 2025, what should have happened in the meantime. So each of you, 30 seconds max. Enough. Go.
Sense of urgency, not enough. What needs to be there till 2025? All the international community must do whatever it takes to make Russia stop the capacity to continue the war. Ukraine must win, that's for sure, but enable that with sanctions, with cutting dependencies on Russia in every sphere, and making sure that Russia pays the price for whatever damage it has been done. The frozen assets on the table.
Okay.
But very important to carry on. SMEs, small and medium businesses, were mentioned, and
I think you have to address the SME issue bilaterally with over a glass of wine. This is important, but we are out of time. So, Natalia, please.
Yes, about the urgency, it's not indeed enough, because the border region that suffers on daily basis, we would like to talk enough, but we do know that if we have small space, we even choose to talk about some kind of reconstruction money, because as we often told, it's not our topic. We directly connected with, for example, recovery of finance, yes? So we have even to think even what we are speaking. Regarding the next conference, my dream is that we will have all Russian frozen assets, not only interest, and have plan for their implementation.
That's an excellent plan. Alyona, you're...
It was a little bit for me emotions that we're not talking. We're talking. If I would have more chance, I would talk a lot about it. We need weapons. We need to all our country be safe by air. We need a lot of things. But I have only 4 minutes, only 2 minutes here to talk about simple, like its theme is recovery, and I talk about recovery. But in informal questions, we talk about a lot about safety, a lot about our killed civil society activists that are now, like our civil society, our best people from the civil society activists are now killed, a lot of them now in this war. So, and Russia is still very strong, and it's like when we're talking about what you can do, you can fight the propaganda that it still is in the European Union countries, and this why it's one of the points why we can't receive all the weapons, everything that we need, like to keep us safe and to like down Russia. So we ask you to also to be included, to be the voice that can stand against Russian propaganda.
Thank you so much.
Let me perhaps just address the last question, because it was so passionately covered. So the last question about the funding, I do not agree, first of all, that if you're listening to me, thank you, that the funding is depleting. I think there is a lot of resources from international organizations. There is more to come. It's the matter how we frame our proposal to them. It's the matter how we frame this recovery efforts. So there is a lot of initiative has to come from our side, from the governmental side. So I cannot agree to that. However, we at SEVED know for sure that we will never be a solely grant-reliant organization. Thus, fundraising among business, fundraising among individuals abroad, among the Ukrainian diaspora is the way to go. Not only the grants is the source of funding.
Thank you so much. I just want to say, I will not summarize it. I just want to say that there was a male Ukrainian participant invited. Also, he was not let out. This is the reality that Ukrainian males face. So he didn't get the permission to leave, and he would have covered the important topic of energy resilience, which our discussion did not cover. So it's not just me, the male, on the stage. But join me by thanking the Ukrainians, everyone in this room who came so long, on such a long distance. And I look forward to continuing hearing the reflections from the other following panels and enjoy the conversations with you afterwards. Thank you so much.
Tia, you introduced.
I was already so passionate that I forgot my next part. Thank you, Lesia. We now come to actually some of the parts that you have waited for. We come to the official responses. So not just a glass of wine and other formal and informal discussions, but we're going to hear from two top officials, if I may say so. And we're going to begin by the German side and then close with the Ukrainian side, because they have the URC next year. So let me introduce to the floor Christine Tötzke. She's Abteilungsleiterin, I believe that's head of department in English for Latin America, Middle East, Eastern and Southeastern Europe at the Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development. And she will share with us in about 5 minutes her reflections on this panel and on the role of civil society. So join me for a warm welcoming applause to Christine Tötzke.
Is it working? Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm quite overwhelmed by this energetic discussion, because after 2 days of the conference, I came here quite a bit exhausted and thought, well, okay, another panel, another session, but I mean, I'm really now, I got a lot of energy from your discussion as well. So thank you for that, first of all. And yes, I already said 2 days of the URC 24, and maybe let me start by saying that I got a lot of inspiration from all the panels and from the discussions, who were indeed quite, I think, quite diverse. And I really thought that bringing together, and it was said by the panelists, representatives from international organizations, representatives from civil society, business companies as well, and from the municipalities, really brought a kind of reality check to a lot of to a lot of us, but also to international organizations. Because, as somebody said, we have a lot of plans, they have a lot of plans, and it's so important to receive your perspectives and to get this reality check. I think it has been very encouraging. We had 3,000 participants, as you might know, from governments, municipalities, businesses, and civil society organizations. We got the message, I think, last year very well, that we need to include all the actors in the conference itself and not have separate formats. And I mean, I think the feedback from what I heard from you is I think slightly positive, that we managed to do that. Of course, there is room for improvement, which I leave to my Italian colleague next year. But maybe one other thing is that, and this was mentioned too, how are we going to follow up on this? The alliances were mentioned. We have the Skills Alliance. We have an alliance on the very important contribution of SMEs on gender too, and of course a coalition for sustainable municipalities. I'm not sure whether you were able today to follow the introduction of this mapping of municipality partnerships, and it showed there are already a lot of them all over the world. Municipalities are supporting Ukrainian municipalities, but it also showed that there are a lot of, and I think it's a four-digit number, 1,000 or something municipalities in Ukraine who do not receive so far any kind of support, or who do not have a partnership with another municipality in the world. And this was something we tried to encourage other countries to make sure that they find something, that they support Ukrainian municipalities to fill this gap, preferably until the next URC. So what I mean is, it was not a standalone and single event, but actually the work is now starting. The work is now starting to make all the alliances that were launched at the conference, to make them operable, and the work starts in Ukraine, but it's not only a German or Italian task, it's a task of all the participants of the conference. And I already told our colleagues who work at our embassy in Ukraine that for them the work now starts. They have to make sure on the ground with other donors, with other participants, with other stakeholders, that the alliances that we launched now come to life. And I can assure you that we in Germany and with others as well, that we are monitoring that, and that we really want to make this happen and want to bring them into life. And I also would like to take the opportunity to really thank you, all the civil society actors. We know, and it became very, very clear at the conference, what an important role you have in the country for supporting the people in every dimension, be it humanitarian, be it on the educational side, be it on social support, psychosocial, psychological support. We know that and we see that, and it's so important that you can raise your voice and that you contribute to any kind of recovery. And maybe one last words. I know that maybe the World Recovery Conference had the impression for you that we do not consider or do not take into account the daily life that you face in Ukraine, the attacks from the Russian side, and that there is an urgency. I think that is not at all ignored. It's just that the focus of this conference and of this conference row, it's a row of conferences, URC, is actually on the civilian support. There are other formats who face or who address the military side. But I think it's just to assure you and that it's not at all ignored. We had, maybe you saw that the slogan of the conference was United in Defense, United in Recovery, Stronger Together. Defense industries actually were taking part at the business forum, and there was a panel on defense as well. But there are other fora who address this very important issue. It's just to assure you that we do not ignore that. Maybe I stop here and give the floor to my time.
Thank you so much. I think this applause goes to the whole organizing team, not just to the BMZ and the Auswärtiges Amt, but to everyone who organized the conference. And I might turn now to Davide La Cecilia, who is the special envoy for reconstruction of Ukraine with the Italian Foreign Ministry. And before you start, I just want to say good news is that Davide will be here for the remainder, so he's not running off to another event. So everyone who with good ideas, there is some wine, so you can pass on your good ideas to Davide at the end. So thank you. We're looking forward to hearing your reflections.
Thank you so much, Mattia. Actually, I feel a bit under pressure, I must say. From tomorrow, I will put a counter in my office going into reverse for the 1 year that we have to get in order to host in Italy the Ukrainian Recovery Conference 2025. For this year, we will be available, we will be listening, we will be open to messages, and we very much share the inclusive approach of the German organization of the conference this year. I want to thank the 13 organizations hosting us today. Actually, it's a very brilliant idea to have this operational follow-up on one of the dimensions of the Ukrainian Recovery Conference. This is an ideal way to continue our dialogue, to pave the way towards the next year conference in Italy. Actually, the way is already paved. We are going already at full speed. And this is for me a real full immersion. So thanks a lot for inviting me to this panel on reform and resilience. It is very important for the organizer of the next URC to pay attention and to learn first-hand impression and the ideas from the civil society, and I do think that we should pay attention to it. As a former ambassador to Kyiv, I had to express my deep admiration and approval for the reform efforts undertaken by the Ukrainian civil society, by the many organizations of the civil society. They've been at the center of the reform movement in the country. They have embodied the aspiration of the Ukrainian people to integrate into the European Union, and they will be also at the heart of the process of recovery and reconstruction. And it's not by chance that civil society has been involved in these processes for quite some time. They've been constant interlocutors of G7 ambassadors, this group of G7 ambassadors supporting reform in Ukraine, of European institutions in the application of the association agreement, and also in the present phase, civil society has an important role to play. As to the reconstruction, I want to say that there are two important elements to underline. The first one is the deep connection with the process of accession to the European Union. The two processes, the accession to the European Union and the reconstruction, are intimately interlinked. We need to rebuild Ukraine not only per se, but also as a common space with the European Union, politically, economically, socially, in order to meet the aspiration of the Ukrainian people as expressed first and foremost by the civil society. And the second element is that to have an effective reconstruction, we need the full involvement of the civil society of Ukraine in the process, the contribution of ideas, the drive for reform, the guarantees in the reconstruction activities that need to be monitored, that need to be accountable, they need to be transparent. And this brings us to another important dimension of the Ukrainian Recovery Conference, which is the local dimension. We need to bring reconstruction closer to people. We need to do reconstruction at communal level. In Italy, we had a long experience of post-war reconstruction and reconstruction after natural catastrophe, natural disasters, and we saw that it's very difficult to impose from the top layers of reconstruction, one on top of the other: energy, water, health, residential reconstruction, because they most of the time do not work. So we need to have instead a bottom-up approach, an indication from the basis, starting from the territory, and also these indications will come from the civil society. There is a role, a very important role for local authorities in building a democratic space in order to have different contributions, a different perspective to establish a democratic participation in the mechanism of monitoring corruption and conflict of interest. In other words, once again, the contribution of civil society. And this approach is not only theoretical, by the way. We saw it already at work in the ideas of our Danish friends in the master plan of the city of Mykolaiv, where they are building very important institutions for the fight against corruption, and also as far as we are concerned in the reconstruction of Odessa, we would like to replicate the same approach. Italy today signed an agreement for the patronage of the city of Odessa. We allocated 45 million to restore the cathedral, to protect cultural heritage, and to realize the master plan of the city. And one of the institutions that we would like to establish is an observatory for the reconstruction of the city, which will be mainly including elements of the local civil society. If I have another couple of minutes, I want to also to make some reflection on how to translate the role of the civil society into the Ukrainian Recovery Conference 2025. We will draw upon the results of these 3 beautiful days organized by our German friends. We will confirm the 4 dimensions of this Ukrainian Recovery Conference. We feel that we need a bit more continuity in between the 2 exercises. As I heard, Ukrainian Recovery Conference is sometimes perceived as a standalone event, so we need to build a process between the 2 conferences. We will work on the deliverables from the German organizer. We will, I think, create a sort of roadmap of intermediate events in order to keep the attention alive with a number of preparatory conferences and one of these ideas, one of the deliverables for our Ukrainian Recovery Conference could be to create some sort of forum for the civil society so that we have a mechanism of permanent consultation. Of course, we don't want to be over bureaucratic. I guess you have enough already of people like me, but we need to have a bit more continuity in this exercise and to create a more stable channel of communication with the civil society. This is what we're going to do with the Italian G7, the rest of the Italian G7 presidency until the rest of the year, and then with the organization of the Ukrainian Recovery Conference. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mille grazie. Mille grazie.
Thank you, Excellency. We are now transitioning to a topic that unfortunately sticks to in public minds to Ukraine, and that is the topic of corruption. And you know, we at the RISE Coalition, but more broadly in the expert community in civil society, we are already used to talk and answer questions about corruption, even if we're expert in education, in digitization, in energy. But unfortunately, at the same time, we know how advanced Ukraine is in spheres like transparency. It's actually radical transparency that Ukraine is having, the openness of data, the digitization, and most importantly also how advanced Ukraine is in the anti-corruption architecture that has been built in Ukraine over the last 10 years. But unfortunately, this is being talked about much less frequently, and unfortunately our enemy, the Russian aggressor, is using these narratives and exploiting these narratives in Western countries. So that's why we will be approaching this particular topic from a slightly untraditional angle, and that is the disinformation angle when it comes to the topic of corruption in Ukraine. And for this, to introduce our next panel, I welcome to stage Yulia Yesmukhanova, Deputy Chief of Party of a new USAID project, Pro Integrity. Yulia, welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here to introduce our next section, which is not going to be a panel, but it's going to be 2 TED talks delivered by Josh and from German Marshall Fund and Elena Galushka. We wanted to talk about this topic because it's critical for Ukraine's survival and resilience. And the way we focus this topic, it doesn't mean that we say that there is no corruption in Ukraine. There is corruption. We have been working for 10 years to create institutions that are now effectively are fighting with corruption. The very nature of these institutions is to make corruption visible. And there were recent reports on multiple investigations that goes into media and that is widely discussed. And for many, it seems that the corruption is more prevalent than before. But at the same time, the media monitoring says that their disinformation campaigns are using corruption as a good topic to play on the people grievances about the war locally and on the international arena as well. On the international arena, it is easily used by the local politicians in the other countries to criticize their governments about support to Ukraine. So with this, I think it's important to discuss how we can tackle this issue of disinformation to ensure further support for Ukraine resilience, for Ukraine recovery, and most of all, also the military support of our international partners. So not to delay further, I would like to welcome Josh with his first talk. Thank you.
That's how we treat countering disinformation about corruption in Ukraine too often. Did you hear Oleana Krutz sitting here with a very passionate plea for countering propaganda in the West because it's slowing aid and that's costing Ukrainian lives? We're going to talk about a better way to more proactively do that, because I often hear that resistance is futile when trying to counter disinformation about corruption in Ukraine. Can't fight back, don't even try, because the pessimists warn as soon as you put corruption and Ukraine in the same sentence, you're probably losing your audience, even if you're sharing good news, lifting up a whistleblower, applauding an anti-corruption institution. The fear is that the audience will mostly be thinking, yeah, Ukraine. Corruption. So the pessimists advise this: don't even talk about Ukraine anti-corruption. And of course, they are now unfortunately correct for a major portion of the U.S. population, about a third, which has made it as hard as ever to maintain bipartisan support for Ukraine in the United States. It's still there, the bipartisan support. It's just that it's over the past 5 years been more tenuous than it ever has been before. And a big part of that is that this big unwinnable audience really started to solidify its views on Ukraine and allegations of corruption there in 2019. That's when they started hearing about those issues, many Americans, for the first time in their lives, in the unfortunately extremely polarizing and manipulative lens of Trump's first impeachment. Since then, Trump and his MAGA influencers have pushed Kremlin narratives about Ukraine being hopelessly corrupt and whatever else further into the Western information ecosystem than Russian propagandists could ever do on their own. And so now, nobody in this room should ever, unfortunately, find yourself being interviewed by Tucker Carlson, because anything that you say about governance reforms, anything positive, the audience is primed to believe just the opposite of what you were saying. So I give the pessimists that. However, that does not mean we are going to just throw up our hands and, cede the information space to these goons, let them frame the issues and, bring more and more of Western publics on side to their perspective. It just means that we need to communicate strategically. So as the West counters our own propagandists, we can learn a lot from Ukraine, which has grown extremely adept and active at countering Russian disinformation over the past decade. It's a proficiency that has been on full display since the run-up to the full-scale invasion. Ukraine has hundreds of civil servants working on this threat at the CSC and the CCD and other ministries, communities of elves who are overwhelming trolls, and most importantly, the most vibrant civil society in the world. These Ukrainians, these experts on disinformation, they do not sit on their hands and agonize for days waiting to decide whether, when, and how to respond to Kremlin lies. They are on the hunt, watching like hawks for it. They know the moment it's appearing, and they decide, okay, is this, are we going to be lifting this up? No, yes, like within minutes. And then they debunk it and they ridicule it very effectively. It was an active posture like that helps Ukraine to win the global narrative struggle over how to view the full-scale invasion in 2022 that still to this day informs the way most of the world thinks about the war. So communications need to be strategic in the sense of Sun Tzu, knowing when to engage and with whom and how versus when it's a losing fight. Ukrainian information warriors, they get it. They call themselves bees, knowing exactly where to fly, who to sting. And so Westerners, too, we need some proactivity and strategy and nuance around how to approach different audiences when it comes to talking about corruption in Ukraine. Whereas it is indeed quite difficult to reach about a third of the population, there are at least 3 audiences who I would offer are important targets of strategic communications around Ukraine anti-corruption efforts. First, informed Western publics. There is a lot that experts can do here, largely via journalists, applaud Ukraine's anti-corruption institutions, knock down disinformation. When there is a corruption scandal, make sure, like the MP said, we're not just civil society talking to ourselves, but civil society is being quoted in Western press, explaining the context, explaining how this is a sign of an investigative and accountability system that is actually working, so the public. Western policymakers, another important audience to engage with as Ukrainian anti-corruption experts. They are always asking us for what is the latest, what's happening on reforms, can we have policy ideas around accountability safeguards, transparency tools, donor conditionality, coordination, and finally, of course, Ukrainian authorities. Here, we need to press Kyiv to continue a strong implementation, call out the need to get key reform details right, and take corrective action when reform policies go off the rails. And I think that it is possible to do that carefully at a technical level without running the huge risk of, Trump or Tucker Carlson say, oh, GMF says ESBU reform processes should entail 1 finalist, not 2. Scandal. It's not going to play that way. So, but it might reach the right audiences in Kyiv, especially if the diplomats and donors are following along. So again, lots of space here for strategic communications around Ukraine anti-corruption. Since the first half of last year, when that was really when, at least for me, the partisan threat to U.S. assistance became clear in D.C. And so my team has been doing this with an overriding objective. The way Leslie told us at the beginning, to approach every topic we're talking about tonight from the perspective of wartime needs. That's how we've been thinking about strategic communications around anti-corruption. An overriding objective of insulating American public discourse from disinformation about corruption that could derail wartime support, especially the supplemental over the past year. So we started last year by authoring research that charts how Ukraine has built more anti-corruption institutions since 2014 than any country has ever done in a single decade in history. If you add up all of the open data disclosures, the restructured industries, decentralization, specialized anti-corruption agencies, now the ordinary judicial, it's never been done in just a decade anywhere in the world. We made that, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's for the reformers, right? The reformers of the past decade and of the next decade too, because we're halfway. Ukraine is halfway through that generational struggle. We make the positive story credible by also addressing the further reforms that are needed to build on that, for the decade to come as well. We got the New York Times and other outlets to cite that research and build articles that you can see are structured around that concept, work with centrist House Republicans to get that accountability language into the supplemental, op-eds about that, brought delegations of Ukrainians to DC to meet lawmakers. And I think we had a degree of success there, notwithstanding the truly tragic 6-month delay in the supplemental that Ukrainian lives are still paying for. The polling suggests that most Americans, you cannot win the debate over aid to Ukraine on the issue of corruption, but you can lose it there. So you have to come to play defense at least, which we did. The arguments that we heard from the skeptics of aid to Ukraine were not mostly about corruption. It was more isolationist narratives. Need to secure the U.S. border first, invest that money at home, Europe should pay more, not America's fight, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, corruption was still in the mix, typically like a truly cynical MAGA type of J.D. Vance and Marjorie Taylor Greene propagating Kremlin-seeded fabrications about Zelensky's yachts, his wife's shopping tree, totally made up by Russia. But those lies, they were not at the top of the list. And so now we need to build on that success, take it to the next level, convene a Ukraine reform working group where governance experts in Kyiv and internationally will be sharing information with each other, with policymakers, with the public, strategically tell Ukraine's story in a more constructive way. And particularly, it's, again, so important at this stage in the war when the survival of the Ukrainian nation is dependent on more, faster aid from the West. And frankly, we also face a meaningful risk of losing U.S. presidential support later this year. So it's important as ever. That's kind of my own focus within the realm of reform and resilience, governance for survival. It's important to talk about Ukrainian anti-corruption efforts in the international community. It just has to be done strategically. Thanks. And again, I learn a lot from Ukrainian pros who do this, who figured out how to work on anti-corruption while also advocating for wartime resilience and victory. And in my view, nobody has done that, struck the right balance more adroitly than Elena Halushka, who's gone from Kyiv City Council to ANTAC, co-founder of the International Center for Ukrainian Victory. So we're very grateful to her for being here and would love to hear what you have to say, Elena.
Thank you so much, Josh, all of the organizers. My big honor to be here today with you. When I was thinking basically how to build what to start with this conversation, I actually recalled that back in December 2021, President Joe Biden had his inaugural summit for democracy. And also back in December 2021, Russia was intensifying the buildup of their troops at the Ukrainian borders, which started in spring 2021. And together with my colleague Daria Kaleniuk, we wrote a published desperate article in the Foreign Policy, claiming that if you want to save democracy, you have to save Ukraine. You have to prevent those things, terrible, horrible things, which Russia wants to do to our country. Back then, we argued that successful democratic Ukraine would probably motivate Russian people to overthrow Putin and hopefully struggle for their own democratic changes. We were very naive because Russians do not want to have decent life. Russians want Ukrainians to live much worse and preferably in the Russian colony, enslaved by them. So Russia has been always using strategic corruption as the tool of their influence over countries, and not only Ukraine. Basically, what they are doing, trying to do towards Europe and other partners across the globe, it's absolutely the same. And I'm not attributing all of Ukraine's corruption to Russia. Some of it is homemade. But what I want to say is that Russia has been abusing this vulnerability very effectively and for decades. We all remember, strategic corruption with the gas supplies. We all remember, Russian-Ukrainian oligarchs that were always trying to tie our countries together. Media pushing Russian narratives and brainwashing Ukrainian people all over again. Fifth column and their agents working inside law enforcement, courts, constitutional court judges with the Russian passports, Supreme Court judges with the Russian passports, and other agents of influence. When Russian hybrid war against Ukraine failed, then tanks started arriving. And right now, Russia is at war with Europe. It is still on the hybrid phase of war. And the latest hybrid counteroffensive, Russia has failed, which regarded European Parliament. Fortunately, the results of the European Parliament were not as right radical as Russia wished it, but they won't give up. They will continue trying to abuse all of the vulnerabilities and trying to get Europe into their sphere of influence, including via strategic corruption, including via corrupting European politicians and trying to buy them. So for us, for Ukraine, fight against corruption is basically our national security issue. Because unfortunately, at this stage, Europe or the US do not consider this war to be their own direct existential threat, like it is for us. And the fact that American aid stalled for more than half a year and European aid, Europeans failed to catch up and substitute this vacuum proves that we have to be seeking for all of the possible and available capacities and capabilities that are inside us. Because the war of attrition is a long war where everybody is mobilizing their own resources. So for us, it's very important, and I have to say that Ukraine did manage to turn our vulnerabilities into our strength, because it's not about, corruption being problem. It's about how this problem is being handled. And the recent scandals which we had in the Ministry of Defense, in some other governmental institutions, they fortunately triggered positive institutional changes. Like, for example, the launch of the agency for non-lethal procurements or the lethal procurements that are already delivering pretty tangible results. And here we come to the paradox of corruption, because when we are having investigative journalists, civil society, anti-corruption bodies doing their work properly, you're seeing, all of those headlines in, as Josh mentioned, New York Times, Financial Times, another big scandal, another search, another corrupt official caught red-handed. And this creates a very false perception that not there is effective fight against corruption, which discloses this corruption, even during the genocidal war. But people who are not, looking very deeply and sophisticatedly into this topic, they will have the feeling that, come on, if they have corruption during the genocidal war, they are doomed to failure. And we have to, of course, counter this narrative. And I think that our fight against corruption is also very important for our partners. We had a very anecdotic situation last winter when, together with my colleague Tanya Shevchuk, we went to Denmark to advocate for F-16 fighter jets. And we spoke to the journalists who wanted very much to speak about corruption. And we wanted very much to speak about jets. And they wanted to talk about corruption. And in the end, they came up with the interview that anti-corruption activists came here to advocate for fighter jets, but they are also fighting corruption, because both pillars are their victory. I mean, it was like literally, entire paragraph, because they couldn't, find the better synergy between those topics. But that's the reality that we Ukrainian activists are operating in. And that's also the narrative which Russia is trying to abuse against us, because Russia tries to portray us as utterly corrupt country, as the small, autocracy trying to defend from the large autocracy, trying to paint us, to blur the lines between us. And that's why it's incredibly important to continue explaining success stories that we have. The last 3 points, because I have to finish already, is that in Ukraine, the people are the main drivers for any anti-corruption and rule of law reforms. This is not imposed at us, but by the foreign donors. It is the hunger from the society, and the conditionalities of the foreign partners is just the vehicle to transform the hunger of the society into policy-making decisions. Yes, this war triggered, people are very traumatized by injustice of the war, and that's why they feel a lot of pain when they are traumatized by injustice domestically. And also we have to understand that lack of transparency, and Ukraine used to be probably the most transparent country in Europe before the full-scale war, it is unfortunately the fertile ground for any abuse and any corruption. And that's why I think that successful fight against corruption, it is also the justice in the eyes of Ukrainians who deserve justice, because we are going through super complicated period of our history. And the last point, the best recovery tomorrow is weapons today, because that would mean that we would have nothing to recover. And it's incredibly important that Ukraine continues on the EU path, on the NATO path, and I hope that we will finally have this process unblocked, because it's very unfair when we are hearing that we won't be part of the NATO because we are super corrupt. It's not true. And we have to bring the international businesses, foreign businesses to Ukraine, because that's the matter of our national security. We need those businesses to lobby for us within their government. And all of those things are the matter of our national security. And we are extremely grateful to foreign partners for being with us on this very long way towards our victory.
Thank you, Olena. Quite a heavy topic, right? Corruption, power abuse, disinformation. I suggest we try to shake it off a little bit, and for that I invite to the stage again Mariana Sadovska with a beautiful composition based on the works of Serhiy Zhadan, one of the most prominent Ukrainian authors, who, by the way, joined the Ukraine Armed Forces just 2 weeks ago. And this will be also the start of our very short break, 10 minutes, and we will expect you back in 10 minutes again. Please enjoy, Mariana.
are my fields and my gardens, these are my fortresses, in a distance my pastures, by the river and my fish in shallow water, the apple trees along the road, the hops growing green, the grapes growing ripe, all is mine. All is mine, 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 mine. Grass, mice in the grass and field workers cursing about my Milky Way and the dust in the graves, 47 wonders, the smoke from the incense in the churches and from the forest and fire, all is mine, all is mine, mine, mine. These are my borders and my junkies, my sweet liquors and home distilled vodka. These are my sons in warm bellies, swimming in dreams of migration, my madmen who daily praise the name of God. These are my tractors and my combines, my sweet liquors and home distilled vodka. These are my sons in warm bellies, swimming in dreams of migration. The twilight will fall upon my yards, and there my women will begin to sing. Ой, відверни, Боже, хмару над чужою сторону. This is my country. Це моя країна і вся хуйня в цій країні також лише моя. This is my country and all fucking mess in this country is also mine. So what do you want, you merciless, ruthless world? Why do you wear me out in my sorrow? I gave you a safe place to cross the river, a delicious dinner, women, and clench your fists, and clench your fists, exchange your direction and view. Це мої поля і мої сади, це мої пасовиська вдалині, це мої фортеці, це мій чумацький шлях, і в могилах прах, це мої церкви, це мої наливки і самогон, це мої жінки, це мої сини, це моя країна, це мої божевільні, це моя країна, це моя країна, це моя. Ой, відверни, Боже, хмару над чужою сторону. Добре, для тих, хто слухає, для вас буде Олена Теліга. Для тих, хто не слухає, буде теж Олена Теліга. Björn, kannst du Harmonium ein bisschen lauter hier? Bitte. Зловіщі брязки днів, що б'ються на кавалки, і жах ночей, що затискають плач. Ти зраджений життям, яке любив, так палко відчуй найглибше, але все пробач. Зловіщі брязки днів, що б'ються на кавалки, і жах ночей, що затискають плач. Ти зраджений життям, яке любив, так палко відчуй найглибше, але все пробач. Зловіщі брязки днів, що б'ються на кавалки, і жах ночей, що затискають плач. Ти зраджений життям, яке любив, так палко відчуй найглибше, але все пробач. Байдуже все, коли душа зім'ята, сліпа, безсила, сунеться на дно, на дно.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could please ask you to make your way back to your seats. Ladies and gentlemen, we are beginning our program. If I could please ask you to make your way back to your seats. Thank you.
Виключаю точно. Тобто ми можемо зараз.
I think we can, yeah. Friends and colleagues, let us now transition to Ukraine's public sector. One of the key prerequisites for a successful Ukraine's European integration, Euro-Atlantic integration, and to a successful Ukraine's recovery and reconstruction. And the quality and speed of these processes will depend essentially on the good governance system in Ukraine and essentially on the capacities and capabilities of Ukraine's civil service. And for this, and to open our next panel on the civil service and public administration, I give the floor to Olena Shepurna from the Professional Government Association, one of the co-of our event.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you're enjoying the break, the communications, a great time to connect. It's a big luxury. So thank you for organizers for bringing us here today. So we'd like to dive with you into a very crucial reform in Ukraine, the public administration reform in progress since 2016. And my name is Olena Shepurna. I'm co-founder of head of the Professional Government Association. This association strives to foster PAR, shortened for public administration reform, through engaging Ukrainian graduates from Western international universities to join the public service and bring international experience. So in these 40 minutes, we'll have a short video message. We'll have a great discussion with our wonderful panelists. Thank you for being ready. And I would like at the end for you to understand why we would like to invest in public service reform, why it matters, and why you all should care. First of all, as Lesa has said correctly, it's a baseline reform. For other reforms, we need our institutional capacity, we need effective practices in place, and we need people to have some creativity also to make decisions and to drive forward. We are fighting again the country with one-man decision maker, and we really need to be modernized. Secondly, PAR is prerequisite for European integration, and then, of course, the most important thing, we need to win the war not only the war, we need to win a better peace than it was before. And for that, of course, effective institutions and services are a key. Just to give you some basic numbers, we have 169,000 public servants. In Germany, if I'm not mistaken, 500,000. We have 20 ministries, 13 state agencies, central bodies, executive power, local administrations. Last year, that number was 5,000 more. This year, it's probably going to be less. And we're worried where there will be enough capacity to implement reforms, how to prevent the burnout of our people. We know that Hungary and Norway, they have the lowest number of people in public service, but the KPI is definitely different. And of course, we need to build trust to the government. In this way, PGA is currently implementing a survey for the National Agency for Civil Service. We are working on the memorandum to unite all stakeholders around PAR for the PAR Strategy 2530 and trying to connect Ukrainian students abroad, which are over 150,000 people, to connect them to Ukraine for the long term. We believe that our public service is doing a great job, staying resilient with a lot of challenges, veteran reintegration, return of people, fleeing of young people to better paid jobs, and of course working through air sirens, which from the beginning of the war accounted for 48 days. So basically 1.5 months of non-stop air sirens. So this said, let's see the challenges and solutions from our leaders from Ukraine that didn't make to the conference today. And after that, we'll invite our note speakers for the stage. So the production team, if you could please play the video.
Public service has been tasting for strengths. We have demonstrated resilience and institutional sustainability. However, the public service must become even stronger. It is time to restart the public service system and build effective institutions, especially in the deoccupied territories. Secondly, we are facing European integration challenges. Effective public administration, good governance, and the development of efficient European-style institutions.
Вона забирає кадри. Значний відсоток держслужбовців наразі захищають країну зі зброєю в руках. Це частина, зокрема, жінки, які виїхали. Вона забирає гроші. Недостатнє фінансування забезпечення діяльності органів державної служби, неконкурентна заробітна плата. Вона допускає багато маніпуляцій та підсилює суспільну недовіру, бронювання від мобілізації, спекуляції навколо питань з відбудовою чи гуманітарною допомогою та інше.
I would think number one challenge in that system is people. What can we do in order to prepare good people, to motivate them, move forward, how to attract them to the state service? It's a big question for the current setup. Number two challenge is corporate culture, because obviously you can have good people in the system, but nevertheless still they do not produce the results which we are all in the society expecting for. Number three challenge is law enforcement institutions, because they should be really motivating good deeds and good people to continue.
The first step is to reform the civil servants' remuneration system. We need to introduce a transparent remuneration model based on the classification of positions. The second step is developing and professional service in local self-government bodies. This requires implementing the roadmap for the new law of Ukrainian in service in local self-government bodies. And the third step requires improving and restoring the competitive procedure for civil service positions.
Щоб покращити ситуацію, нам треба перемогти. Тоді з'являться більше морально мотивованих кадрів.
the whole society should be more educated, should understand that the state service also needs to have the best people inside of the society. They should be not punished because of doing good things and because of taking responsibility. On the contrary, they should be motivated to go further. And obviously we should work on the law enforcement institutions because the justice system should be in place. They should be really good arbiter in order to allow the whole society develop properly towards the prosperity.
Дуже хотіла закликати випускників західних вишів доєднуватися до реформи держсектору України. Бо на сьогоднішній момент кількість державних підприємств в Україні є однією з самих великих в світі. Тож ця реформа є найбільш важливою і найбільш значущою для нашої країни. Слава Україні!
Teaser for our great renowned panelists. So I invite all panelists to come to the stage, including the moderator, Konstantin Lesnichi, PGA board member, and Ukrainian West, who will be moderating the panel, and our colleague Victoria Vdovichenko from PGA, also Ukraine Center for Defense Studies, to help with translation. Colleagues, please.
This one? Okay, this is mine. Thank you, everybody. That's a great pleasure for all of us as organizers to see so many incredible faces. I think you're probably a little bit tired of 2 days of intensive communications, but just please spend us with this couple of hours. I think it will be interesting, the most interesting part. I want to introduce my colleagues today on the stage. We wanted to make this panel just very interesting in terms of specific information on what should be done to improve the public administration reform, and we invited those people who could definitely, who are decision makers and who could provide this information for you. Alexander Kornienko, First Deputy Chairman of Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, and I can call Alexander as an informal leader of the public administration reform in Ukraine. Welcome, please, Alexander. Another representative of Parliament of Ukraine, Liza Yasko, Committee on Foreign Affairs. Please, welcome. We also have Vitaly Koval, who is the head of the State Property Fund of Ukraine. Prior to that, Vitaly was head of the Rivne Regional Administration, so he's very experienced. He knows regions quite well and familiar with all local problems. So thank you for your contribution today, I guess, to Vitaly. Ugis Six, coordinator of EU for PAR. He worked for more than 10 years in different countries, and he is also from public sector, and he is one of the best experts, I would say, in public administration reform in Ukraine. Welcome, Ugis. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say that I spent the last 2 days just talking with businessmen, with politicians, with civil society. That was quite intensive talks. And I was asked, let's say, what I asked them, what they expect from the Ukrainian government besides usual things like rule of law, anti-corruption, other stuff. And the answer was they want to make sure that Ukrainian government will be predictable, and also that Ukrainian government will have a clear plan and strategy, as Anna Navasad mentioned today, that we probably do not have. One of the URC organizers today is the State Secretary of BMDET from the German side, the key person at URC. He said that conference was, I quote, successful success, because it was like 3,600 participants and 16 billion funds. That's something that MOUs, I guess, could somehow correspond to this amount, but we'll see later on after the conference. But let me remind you that World Bank estimated actually the reconstruction needs of $500 billion US. So basically, it's still even with 16 billion, it's room to grow. Now, question arises basically how we are going to manage this recovery, and do we have institutional capacity and people to deal with these new challenges? My first question would be to Alexander Kornienko, First Deputy Chairman of Verkhovna Rada. Definitely Parliament will play a significant role in just bringing all acquis communautaires in the coming years, so that's probably the key element of in that process. But what needs to be done in the reform and capacity building of the Parliament to allow accomplishment of these ambitious goals? How do you think this process can be improved? Because definitely Parliament is the key element of this process. Please.
Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'm not informal leader. Ugi is informal leader because he more than 10 years with us in this project, in this reform. I'm only for 5 years. If we talk about accession to EU, we should to use term accession, I think, not integration, because Ukraine already European country. We need to understand it, we need to recognize it, and our partners need to recognize it, and I'm telling in center of Berlin it very strongly. But you know, of course, accession is a process. It's called process of accession. That's why we need to use very usually approach from project management to understand our goals, to understand our resources, to understand our technological map and roadmap, how we should to do this thing. If we talk about acquis, of course 5,000 texts, maybe 3,000, we don't know, maybe 7. First of all, we need to estimate how many acts we will vote for next years. Secondly, of course, we need to estimate our resources inside the country. It's all about public service. Inside Parliament, of course, it's about, first of all, our level of expertise, of understanding a key, and understanding how and what we can do in this very hard, you know, corridor of negotiation framework, because all in all, as I already understood, maybe Ugis will add something more about it, we can't change a key in time of integration. Yeah, but we try all time to change something. Because we're a democratic country, we have different MPs with different mansions, different committees, try to check level of, you know, possibility of changing, and all time maybe we will return sometimes to some position from negotiations chapters, because of course part of them will be very hard and very sophisticated to communicate with Ukrainian society, all of us, and I guess all of you also. We observed situation with our neighbor Poland and with agriculture and transport, you know, sector. Of course, we will have the same situation with other countries through Europe all time, because Ukraine will be the biggest agriculture country in the European Union. We need to understand it, and we need to be very clear that it will be our problem. It will be our possibility, but it will be our problem also in time of negotiation. That's why let me be very frankly said, we can't change MPs. It's an unreal task, because MPs is politician, and people can elect anyone. People can elect 140 guys who will never ever didn't know anything about EU, okay, and something else. That's why if we talk about politician level, we need to talk about values, about understanding these people of value of EU accession, and about willing 80% of people to be in the Euro, to be member state in very, very close perspective. But on the other hand, what we can manage, with what we can work with institution. Institution, it's a secretary of Верховна Rada, for example, our special body that we created, research service of Верховна Rada, research body, дослідницька служба. It's additionally bodies like EU integration special transforming office that we have near government, near Верховна Rada. It work together. We try to work with our help teams of MPs to increase the level of understanding process of expertise. Of course, we have a lot of MPs who are very interested in EU integration. We established special body that we hadn't before. It's a subcommittee of EU integration in every committee. And we have a responsible person in every committee who is responsible for EU integration. Fortunately, half of all our committee was able to promote it on high level, and this is very interesting team that can work together with our committee of EU integration and with our all expertive bodies that will help us to do only one very simple but very hard thing, to keep in this very hard corridor with hard wall of AKE, and to make our legislation more close to AKE, to make process of technical integration. We talk about technical level of capability of our legislation with EU legislation on the huge level. But if we talk about politician part of negotiation, of course it will be challenged because of all our circumstances that we all know. Thank you.
Happy to hear that Parliament is ready. So we'll know about the readiness of the Cabinet of Ministers in a few seconds. But I want to ask Lisa Yasko, MP from Ukrainian Parliament as well. Actually, back in 2001, when it was the European Yes Conference, one of my colleagues asked President Zelensky if he want to bring 10 Western-educated Ukrainians to the government. And President Zelensky said, okay, just bring it to me, and just we had certain negotiations and were certain talks with the prime ministers, with different ministers. And we saw that the talents needed, and it happened back after the revolution in the past, after the Revolution of Dignity in 2014, and we saw new names in the governments like Natalia Yareska, like Abramovich, Pivovarsky, and Vlad Rashkovan, for instance. Yeah. But my question to Lisa is: do you still believe that government is looking for talents now and ready to get them from outside? Because if you look at this audience, for instance, they're proactive, well-educated, patriotic, and do you think these people deserve to be driving force of the recovery overall?
Well, first of all, I think all these 2 days are showing that there is a maximum number of people who are involved in so many different things in Ukraine, and they're present here, and that's a big achievement of this conference, and we already discussed this. I want to start by saying that more than 10 years ago, actually I was working inside the Ukrainian parliament when the so-called Analytical Research Support Euro Integration Center was created. It was like 13 years ago. And then after that, like 10 years, almost 10 years ago, I studied abroad. It was at University of Oxford, and I was active with all the community of Western educated people, always believing that we have to be in different authorities, we have to get the best knowledge and education abroad to be able to make a change in Ukraine. And I think many of us don't need to repeat that, because many of us are having the position in different sectors, or had the positions, or are working in a civil sector, but we don't know how hard it is. We all know that the times in Ukraine are very different, and things that we were discussing 10 years ago or 5 years ago are completely different right now, because there are some systematic needs, they are still the same, but now it's very hard to talk about some things that we've heard during this presentation in video. For instance, the question about the salaries. Of course, civil servants need to have a good salary, but once we in the parliament would be voting for that, there will be a huge hatred saying that all this money should go better to the war, to the defense. So any kind of advocacy on this question becomes very, very hard. And I think everyone who has ever been to the civil service understands that it's not going to be easy. I think that because of the war, many people are deciding to be in the places where they could contribute most. Many went to the army or doing something similar. So I think that your question, Konstantin, of course, all these talents need to be a part of this recovery process. But the question is, how do we make sure that these talents are still alive? I'm sorry for being that harsh. How do we make sure that mentally we are still prepared to work with each other, and the questions that are rising in the society regarding, I don't know, the justice and other things, how we are going to deal with that? What shall we do with the civil servants, for instance, that unfortunately were civil servants in currently occupied territories? There are huge number of the problems connected to the legal part of it. And I think this is a question that we all need to address because we are not under the Chatham House rules here, but I'm going to say, which all of you know, of course, we are not the most healthy society now. We have too many traumas. And if we want to live in peace internally, not only when we have our victory, we have to be prepared that we need to invest in working with each other, and we need to invest in institutional strengths, where, let's be also honest, we have problems with that. And culturally, professional culture, but also the question of the budget. So I know that there are people inside our parliament, most of us, of course, are absolutely pro-reform of the public administration, but I think some things, unfortunately, need to be postponed until the end of the war. And hopefully then there will be different solutions, but they need to come in a very complex setup. It's not only about bringing a salary up. It's also about doing many other reforms in a public administration that are needed. So I want to wish everyone strength to keep going, because we need that strength a lot, because tomorrow will not be easier.
Yeah, thank you. That's. Let me turn to Vitaly Koval and just probably question him of the efficiency of the State Property Fund. Vitaly just headed State Property Fund since the end of last year. But Vitaly, what specific public administration tools do you use? Let's say, can you use to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of what you do? Like HR policy, digitalization, simplification of bureaucracy, or long-term planning, monitoring, evaluation. And I also want to know what challenges your team now have. Just can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Thank you, Konstantin. Hello, everyone. I was first speaker to remember because I use translator. Okay. Костянтин, хотів відповісти на частину питань, які ти задавав Олександру і Лізі, тому що згоден з ними.
I want to answer to some part of your questions that you were asking Alexander and Lisa, because I partially agree with that.
Ми дійсно сьогодні робимо велику справу, тому що змінюємо країну під час війни.
We are definitely doing a big thing because we're changing the country during the war.
Основна теза, яку ми точно зрозуміли, люди важливі.
The main narrative that we are delivering is that the people matter.
Другу тезу, яку я можу точно сказати з впевненістю, інституції важливі.
The second narrative and message, what I say, institutions are also important.
І важливо, щоб люди створювали інституції.
And it's important that people create institutions.
І саме інституційна спроможність сьогодні – це основне завдання в центральних органів виконавчої влади. Ми маємо створити сильну інституційну спроможність.
And institutional capacity is something one of the key message or core task for us, and for us in particular and during the war times, that we have to create that.
Декілька проблем, з якими ми сьогодні зіштовхуємося.
A couple of challenges that we are facing just right now.
Мобілізація в державних органах влади присутня.
Mobilization in the public administration or civil service institutions is present.
Багато чоловіків служать в армії, тобто кількість зменшується.
A lot of male representatives are serving in the army, so it means the quantity of the public servants is decreasing.
Курс на зменшення кількості державних службовців, наприклад, по фонду, зменшив кількість наших працівників з 1800 до 1200 чоловік лише у 2024 році.
The path towards decreasing the number of the public servants from 1,800 decreased in 2024 to 1,200 people.
При цьому задач стало більше, тому що ми штовхаємо вперед реформу оренди державної землі, також санкційні активи лягли на плечі фонду. І це не є погано, це є просто виклик часу, під який потрібно перебудуватися.
And it's a driving force still for us because we have to push up some of the reforms that mention some of the sanctions, actives and assets in particular. And it's hard, but at the same time it's important to keep going.
Тому вихід в дуже фахових людях і тотальній автоматизації процесів.
So the way out, as we see it, of course, is a high professionalism of people and a total automatization or digitalization of the processes.
Ми маємо повністю забрати дискрецію в людських рішеннях, і щоб наші співробітники не могли приймати рішення, які призводять до корупції.
So definitely we have to total discretion, to have a total discretion of our institutional representatives, so in such a way that the people who are taking the decisions are zero to the corruption effects.
Для прикладу, будь-який процес приватизації, а в цьому році і велика приватизація в Україні буде закінчуватись прозорим аукціоном на платформі Прозоро.
So, for example, the privatization, and this year in particular, the big privatization that keeps going on, should and will, in our case, finalize itself the procedures with Prozoro platform.
І в кожному процесі ми шукаємо сьогодні можливість до діджиталізації.
And in each of these procedures, we are seeking for the opportunities of digitalization.
Чим більше автоматизації, тим менше корупції і більше транспарентності.
So the more automatization of the processes we are having, the less, of course, corruptions we are having, and more transparency of the efforts that we are going on.
І важливе питання, яке я хочу обговорити і сказати, можливо, це буде непопулярно.
One more important issue that I would like to present, maybe or perhaps it might be not so popular as you think.
Це те, що ми, як державні інституції, сьогодні втрачаємо самі потенційні і самі потужні кадри, які володіють англійською, які отримали класну освіту, тому що вони переходять працювати в проєкти.
Another challenge that we are having is just we are losing a substantial amount of our highly qualified people who know the foreign languages, who have some of what we say foreign institutions or in universities background. Unfortunately, they are leaving the public institutions and going into some projects or even donor representation offices.
Я знаю, що в залі є такі люди, але я хочу бути відвертим з вами.
I know that in this even room there are such people, but I really want to continue being frank with you.
Наш фонд, наприклад, лише в минулому році в центральному апараті втратив 40 молодих працівників, 41 молодий працівник, які знали англійську і перейшли працювати до фондів, до проєктів, які працюють за міжнародні кошти.
State Property Fund of Ukraine, which I'm representing, only last year, unfortunately, our central office lost 41 public servant or representative of our institution who are representatives of some project supported by international organizations.
Я їх розумію, тому що їхня середня заробітна плата всього-навсього в 6 разів більше, ніж працівників фонду.
I do understand their decision-making process and their decision to change it because their salary is 6 times bigger than something that we can afford.
А тепер про хороше.
And now, a good thing.
В 2019 році я змінив приватний бізнес і перейшов в державну службу.
Since 2019, I changed my direction, being in the business, and I gotten myself enrolled into the public service.
І зрозумів одну річ.
And I understood one thing.
Ви ніколи не будете мати можливості так масштабно змінювати країну, як в державній службі.
You will never have such an opportunity to change your country as much as it within the public institutions.
Тому звертаюсь до наших міжнародних партнерів.
So therefore, I'm referring to our international partners.
І до наших українців, які є по всьому світу.
And to our Ukrainians who are worldwide just right now.
Сьогодні час проявити цей національний патріотизм.
It's high time now to project your national patriotism.
І піти працювати в державну службу.
And devotion to go to the public service and being enrolled there.
Тому що ніхто, крім нас, цього не зробить.
Because no one else than us can do that.
І щиро дякую партнерам, які підтримують нас. Я впевнений, що цей перехід від проєктів, які є біля інституцій.
Thank you so I would like to thank all of our international partners because even the projects that you are supporting us.
Він переросте в співпрацю, коли інституція і міжнародні партнери це єдине ціле.
Will be, I believe, increased into something that where the public institutions and these projects and representations of the international donors is a unique thing. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you, Vitaly. That's a very inspiring speech. And now I want to turn to our experts. So now you will hear all truths about public administration. Let's answer the question: who's guilty? And what should be done? Ugis, please. The floor is yours.
Konstantin, thank you. Good afternoon. I would like to start maybe by a little bit reflecting on the earlier panel with the civil society today, where we heard quite a lot of notes on concerns about the capacity of public administration and civil service. And in the context of that discussion, I would also like to kind of pay a bit more justice to our civil service. And my apologies for speaking our and we. I kind of feel like in Ukraine team. I think since the beginning of the war, Ukrainian civil service has shown incredible resilience. Something that you also mentioned in the intro notes. I think the country is doing magic and juggling in a very difficult financial situation. The country, the decision-making machinery of the country didn't stop working for a single day since the very beginning of the war. Public services continue to be provided, yes, in many areas with great partnerships and with the help of civil society. New digital services have been introduced. So there's a lot of credit to be paid to the civil service and its role during the last few years. But I think this incredible resilience is something which we now need to capitalize on and see how can we strengthen the capacity so that the civil service, the public administration and country as a whole are able to respond to the challenges that are on the agenda and will be on the agenda increasingly. So Now, going to your question, I will ignore the guilty part, as I don't think it's a healthy part of a question. But I'll go straight to what needs to be done. And here I think the most important part is, before jumping into what ideas, discussing what ideas, I think it's very important that we have a good discussion and come to some sort of a collective agreement on why and why now. By that I mean that once we agree on where we're going, what's our objective, we can start to have an honest conversation, what doesn't really work, what's the gap, and how to bridge that gap. If we don't have that collective agreement about where we're going and why we're going, then we all end up with our own ideas of what needs to be done. It's mostly about then forests and trees and not the forest, tactics and not the strategy, short term and not the perspective, conditions and not the transformation. So it's very important to agree on the why. Now, why now? My version of the answer will be a little bit with a time perspective. European integration is very, very important direction of countries' development. It's also very important for people of Ukraine in terms of the light in the end of the tunnel. And we can all think of what time it will take. And we can all make our own assumptions. Let's make a working level assumption 2030 is the window of opportunity. And if you think it's 7 years from now, it's not a lot of time. And in that time, we have to implement all the acquis, not only adopt it, but implement it, and in parallel, build the capacity gaps that we have. The other time-bound reason would be that if you treat reforms of institutions a bit like investment, you will be able to see that the return on that investment will come only after 2-3 years. I mean, those who have worked in organizational transformation know it very well. So anything we do this year will start to bring benefits in 2-3 years. And the third element that I want to bring into why now is that this public administration reform term is a little bit abstract, but at the end of the day, it's about the people, it's about transforming large organizations like civil service. And people transformations are always complicated, they always take time, and they cannot be done as a quick fix. So that is my answer, why now? Let me try to give a go at why it is very important to focus on this topic. And my answer will be based around 1, European integration, 2, about the challenges that public sector needs to address in the context of war and the ongoing situation. European integration, that's a process, and I can be here a witness in the country that has gone through that process and myself involved in that. European integration can be truly transformational for state institutions, for the country, for the economy, for the society. However, I would claim that the countries from the last lot of EU accession that did fundamental transformations in public administration did better than the countries that did not. And there are four reasons for that. One, Alexander already mentioned that EU legislation, yes, we need to adopt it, we need to implement it, and we need to do it in the best terms possible for Ukraine, for Ukrainian business, for Ukrainian people, for Ukrainian budget at the end of the day. There will be a day when Ukraine will be part of making EU legislation that will apply in whole of European Union and in Ukraine. At one day, Ukraine will access European funds. And the system with European funds, in fact, works in a way that first you pay in, then you do the things, and if you do them well, the money comes back. So if you don't do them well, you become a net contributor. And I think some of the countries from the EU accession had that problem, that you know, the expectations about benefiting from funds were not as easy as possible. And at the end of the day, and last argument, and probably that's why we have this new part in the negotiations of accession called fundamentals. EU is very much, I would say, the biggest and most important venture of democracies in the world. Yes, not perfect, far from perfect, but it is. And I think the accession process is about bringing in countries that can contribute to that venture. And that's why this reform is very important. Now, very shortly, I know that I'm a bit running out of time, the question on what needs to be done. And here I would kind of make a parallel with digitalization. Everybody says Ukraine has done super well with digitalization, and I fully agree to that. Now, the secret of digitalization is maybe invisible to the users of the digital services, the users of DIA, and that is the interoperability system that Ukraine has put in place, Trembita, for those of you who know. So the question is, what are the things in public administration reform that will be the Trembita of our civil service? And I would say there are three elements that we need to think about in addition to the three that are already in the table in the Ukraine facility. One is a true transformation of civil service. I think what we need to do in the civil service is we need to stabilize it. There's a bit too much turbulence at the moment. It does not mean conservation, but it needs to be stabilized. We need to have a different skills mix. We need to have different culture mix. We need to have different motivation mix. And I think also we need to have a discussion on how do we go back to the original concept of civil service, where there's a balance between the independence of civil service, professionalism, and its agility and flexibility vis-a-vis political system. A little bit more deep state, but in a positive meaning of that word. So that's one. Two, I think any transformation is about leadership. We see from the private sector, there is issue of where do we find our future leaders. I think the same issue applies for the public sector. How do we work? How do we create that group? How we develop that group? That's very important. And last, also very important, integrity. It's not because I believe that Ukraine is doing worse than other countries. Yeah? I think the international metrics of that is not really strong. But I think integrity is important, A, for the trust, meaning for the Ukrainian people. Integrity is very important for the partners, also for the trust. And by integrity, I mean not only ideas like anti-corruption strategies and institutions, I mean how the concept of integrity is translated into every manager's work and how you as managers translate it in your organizations and what it means for everybody in the organizations. Thank you very much. Sorry for overusing time.
Thank you, Gis, for being concise, because he can talk about these topics for hours. Yeah, I just don't have more time to wrap it up, and I just want to thank to all our panelists. That was an amazing discussion. Thank you.
We are arriving at the last thematic block for today. And, you know, talking about Ukraine's future, Ukraine's modernization, and Ukraine's recovery, it doesn't really make much sense without understanding the finance behind it. And despite the various financial instruments that Ukraine already has, the Ukraine facility, the program of the IMF, and other financial support mechanisms, I mean the Ukrainian budget and the budgetary support for the next 2 or 3 years is still unstable. And as you can probably imagine, the budgetary needs are enormous. So to kick off the discussion about the last pillar that we wanted to cover today in terms of Ukraine's resilience, the financial resilience, I welcome on stage Yuri Romashko, who is the director of the Institute of Analytics and Advocacy, to talk about basically where we stand financially today as Ukraine, what are our prospects, and how to boost domestic revenue generation. Yuri, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lisa, for the intro. So, colleagues, technically, I'm in a bad position because it's the last panel, and you are tired because it was just 2 days of discussion with the officials and reformers about the resilience, about the economy, economic recovery, growth, and so on. But practically, there are a lot of food and drinks on the right side, and you are fulfill your battery. So, strategically, I have a mission one more time. Remain and deliver to you the most important messages focused on the finances and funding for the reconstruction. So when we're talking about the funding for reconstruction, first of all, everything is starting from the economic resilience. And the key question today, what does it mean, economic resilience? Because in these circumstances, and we talked a lot about this, for me personally, economic resilience is the air defense systems in the necessary quantity, as on the screen. This influence into the economic activity, this provides more opportunities for the investors, this makes our economy stronger. But it's clear that more air defense systems, it's cheaper than rebuild our infrastructure. But always numbers. What numbers told us? According to the National Bank forecast, which was done in April, GDP growth was reduced by 0.6% in this year, and it's only according to the April estimation. And we all saw what was in May, and we all saw what was just today in Kryvyi Rih. So that's why numbers like 0.6, 1 and 9, 2 and 4, sometimes pictures speak louder than numbers. This is a beautiful city, Kharkiv, which was destroying and is destroying every day by rocket attacks by Russian. In the screen, you could see one of the largest full-cycle printing houses in the Europe, Factor Druk, which was fully destroyed by Russians. And that's why we're talking that it's not only about the infrastructure destroying, it's also about the culture, it's also about identity of Ukrainians. But coming back to the numbers, despite the insufficiency of the air defense systems, and thanks to our defense forces, to the international support partners, to the government of Ukraine, to the activity of the parliament, interventions of the central bank, Ukraine demonstrate unprecedented resilience. In 2022, at the shock of the war, the GDP declines up to 29%. And in the 2023, the economy comes back to the positive growing trajectory, and as you can see, +5 and 3%, and we see the positive forecast for the next years. The same was with the inflation. The same with the international reserves. As of June 1st, Ukraine has $39 billion as a reserves, which means 5 and 1 months of future imports. It's even bigger than it was before the war. Of course, everything which I've mentioned wasn't possible without the support of our international partners, and thanks to that, we achieved and maintained the macroeconomic and financial stability, because it's clear that all of our internal revenues focused on the military and defense forces, and our social needs and other needs are covered by our partners. And as you can see in the slide, the total external financing in the 2022 one was 31.2 billion, and the same was in 2023. And what is also important, for now, we achieve financial predictability for 2024. But the key question is, what will be with the finances in 2025 and the nearest years? And for this, we have two important fundamentals. The first is IMF program for 4 years under the extended fund facility for 15 and 6 billions. Why is that so important? Because it is about the macro frame, it's about the predictability, stability, it's a catalyst for support from other investors and other partners. The same with the Ukraine facility, which was just mentioned in the previous panel, also instrument for 4 years, up to 38 and 27 billion direct budget support, of course, if we fulfill all of the obligations under the Ukrainian plan. And also we have up to 7 billion investment fund. And just today, we heard announcement from the Ministry of Economy of a positive first steps under this pillar. But when we calculate just 2023 and 2024, totally it will be 9 and 9 billions, which means 2/3 of the program. And the maximum which we potentially can get from the IMF in the 2025, it's 1.8 billions. And the same trajectory we can see under the Ukraine facility. This trajectory is logical and normal, but this trajectory said for us that we should mobilize finances internally in the country, make reforms, achieve more sustainability. And the key question is how to do it. And for this, there is no miracle and no very specific things which are not discussed just for these 2 days on previously. First is we should continue to consolidate support of our partners. The key task here is to achieve the same predictability, the support in time, rhythmic support as we achieved in the previous years. It's crucial. This provides for us more stability and as a result provide more opportunities to direct more finances to the defense and military and security. The second thing is frozen Russian assets. It's a game changer. Time has come and we very well hope and believe that in the next few days under G7 Leaders Summit, the positive solutions will be achieved on this, and Ukraine will get more finances to our military, defense forces, and another reconstruction and budgetary needs. The third one important aspect is the reform pipeline. As I was mentioned previously, we have Ukraine plan under the Ukraine facility. We have IMF program, we have World Bank DPO. We have some another instruments, and actually our government has already achieved the metrics of reform. What does it mean? Even if we talk about the Ukraine facility, the Ukrainian plan consists of sectoral, economical, institutional reforms, and each of these reforms provide an opportunities. For example, when we're talking about the more internal revenues, it's about the customs and tax reforms. It's must have. When we're talking about the investments, the corporate governance reform must have. When we're talking about the sectoral policies, transport and logistics, it's about our logistic chains, it's about our export operations, it's extremely important, so transport reform must have. And I can continue on this list. The very important aspect is to do these reforms not just like for the ticking boxes, but at the real impact reform, with estimation and understanding for what. Of course, it's clear that just to implement 200 reforms, it will not fulfill all of our needs. But today, every dollar counts for Ukraine. With these reasons and with this understanding, together with the partners, we developed an essay book as a collection of inspirational concepts and ideas where to find more additional finances to Ukraine needs. And in these documents, using this QR code, you can find ideas, for example, how to combat shadow market of tobacco and alcohol by introducing electronic traceability system of e-excise goods. Or, for example, what digital solutions we can implement and what impact they can have in our investments, attractiveness, in the competitiveness, conditions of the market, how these digital solutions make Ukraine closer to European markets and to European transport system, and so on. So please just use this QR code, or after this speech I will share more information about this. But once again, we could talk a lot about the fundamental reforms, about the economic resilience, about the economic recovery, growth, and so on and so forth. But the baseline is the air defense systems right now. This is about it's a core of economic stability. It's a core of activity of our businesses. It's a core for investments in this particular moment. It makes our economy really strong. So please support Ukraine. Thank you. And I talked about the context with very briefly because we have not so many time. I talk about the context with the finances. And now I would like to give the floor to my colleague from Transparency International, Katerina Rezhenko, who she will explore more about the control. Because if we have enough finances, the next step, how to properly use these finances and how effectively control and monitor these finances. So.
Hello, everyone. I also will try to be concise, considering that everyone probably tired, and control over financing and the budgeting is not exactly the easiest topic to talk about after 7 p.m. To continue, my colleague, the thing is, we receive a lot of funding from international sources, and we also spend a lot of budgetary funds inside Ukraine for different purposes, military or other resilience-related issues. And unfortunately, we also see a lot of scandals and news about misappropriation of funds, and I don't know if I can, okay. Misappropriations of funds and different big cases of top corruption, etc., connected to the use of budget of Ukraine. And if we look at it directly, that majority of financial support from our even international partners, they go directly to the Ukrainian budget. So it's not only about how we use our money, and we already have some issues on where to get them internally, but also how we use the money of the partners who also keep an eye on our actions and ask questions when we ask them more money or more support. So basically, what I'm trying to say that control over the use of our budget spendings and our finances is a key, in our opinion, in our future steps. We already built a very solid foundation when we talk about like basic anti-corruption reform. We move a lot with rule of law, some steps reforms, but the reform of control of funds was, in my opinion, slightly overlooked for quite some time now. And now, at this moment, it is pretty burning and cannot be postponed anymore. We have a number of amazing tools that were not only invented but already fully implemented, like Prozoro and other systems, but they are about transparency. They are about the available information, accessible contracts, contract details of the participants, etc. They are not about actually control, and control is very pivotal when we talk about public finances, because it's not only about replenishing our budgets and giving the answers to some of the questions from our international partners. It's also about the possibility to have more funds to use for the military purposes and etc. And when we talk about control over public finances, there are two main institutions that we can talk about. It's State Audit Service and Accounting Chamber. And those words, even though a lot of people know inside Ukraine and outside Ukraine, they kind of been like that without any serious changes for a while. And it's, I would say, diminishing for how long they were outside of control, outside of attention from active experts and civil organizations, civil society organizations in international partners. So sometimes you cannot even, not many people outside of the specific area even understand what those two agencies do and where there is a limit, like where one stops and another starts. But basically the accounting chamber controls the receipt and the use of national budget funds, and the state audit service is about also using of exercising financial control over the budget funds, but they more about the local level, about the state-owned enterprises, about municipal institutions. And they're also slightly different in the functionality because, for example, state audit service is more about hands-on approach, specific audits. They can go in the buildings of the specific institutions and do the inspections there. But why I am saying all of this is that they have not been reformed for a while. And for example, the accounting chamber, which is probably one of the most institutions for us should be in Ukraine, but it is the institution that operates on the principles that some of them coming up from the post-Soviet era, and they are not fully digitalized. They are not producing a lot of results. They do barely any audits, and considering the field of the institution that they should actually be able to audit, it's almost nothing. So we think they should be one among the attentions of both national and international partners when we talk about the reforms. And three key areas where they need the attention, it's political independence, financial and operational. I will not go into crazy details for you not completely fall asleep, but at least we need to talk about political independence first of all, as we have selection processes, we have good practices, we need to apply them to the accounting chamber, because now it's completely politically motivated situation. And out of 13 people that should be there, there is only 5 positions filled, and they need to audit so many things in the country. Physically, it's not possible. So that should be one of the main priorities when we talk about the reform of accounting chamber. Obviously, there are a lot of other things that should be addressed, but political independence from the parliament, from the presidential office, etc. When we talk about audit of spending budgetary funds, I think I don't need to explain how important it is. When we talk about the state audit service, a lot of things actually has been done there within the last year. They move a little bit faster and there is a little bit less pressure back not to reform them, but still we have main priority areas that we think should be addressed as soon as possible, and it's improvement of procurement monitoring and overall strengthening of institution. Procurement monitoring, just an example of why it is important, what should be done. Over 80% of the procurement monitoring done by the State Audit Service is done post factum, when the procurement already happened, when it should be done preventively, because when it's already done, the procurement is finished, and then the State Audit Service comes to assess something. They cannot, in a lot of cases, return the funds. They cannot kind of roll back the time, and we state that something bad, some embezzlement or some misconduct happened. That should not be the case. They should do it preliminary so the procurement process can be stopped, and hopefully the misappropriation of funds actually wouldn't even happen. Unfortunately, now, as I mentioned, over 80% is happening actually after the fact of the procurement. And obviously our favorite words such as transparency, cooperation is also there, because nothing is available, not nothing, okay, I'm exaggerating, but a lot of the results of the work of this agency is not available online. You don't know what they look into, what they analyze, and that's obviously is impossible. It's very important in order to understand if the agency is efficient. On this note, I will end my speech on this. Just want to kind of underline that this reform should be a priority because it's about money, and if we want, as my colleague mentioned, international partners to give us money, we need to ensure that this money is well spent and efficiently spent, and if something happens, we can determine it before or at least afterwards, and we have less scandals and more efficiency in the country. And from my side, it will be all, and I will pass the word to our third speaker, Oleksiy Movchan. He is a member of the parliament and also a member of the Committee on Economic Development, and he will tell more deeply about the specific reforms that we can pursue. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I will not torture you too long. I'm a representative of Economic Development Committee, and we actually do a lot of reforms. Last time we were just a printer of reforms for the last 2.5 years. So there may be a lot of things to speak about, maybe till tomorrow morning, but I'm not going to do this. I made a list of the most prospective reforms that are or will be adopted in order to make Ukraine's economy resilient. Why it is important? So you probably heard a lot of, you probably know the key figures that we are in trouble in terms of destruction, in terms of demographic crisis, and the issues of the amount of money that we spend for the security and defense. So the key thing is that 50% of our budget goes to the defense expenditures, and most of money, we have 40 billion fiscal deficit, and 76% are covered by our partners, so we are super demanded on somebody's help. So what should we do? We are doing a lot of reforms that all are based on the principles of accountability, transparency, competitiveness, the shadowing economy. Most of them are connected to some kind of integration, NATO integration, EU integration, OECD accession as a club of wealth states. So what I highlighted as a key reforms that should be adopted or are adopted. Actually, the first one is a corporate governance reform. This is, I think, it was a big challenge for 10 years. The corporate governance reforms on the state-owned enterprises was a challenge for Ukrainian parliament, and we did it in February this year as part of DPL and IMF conditionalities, and actually Ukraine facility. What will it give us? It will give the independence of supervisory boards in order to decentralize the system of management of state-owned enterprises. Now we are waiting for the sub-law adoption for corporate governance reform. Second, we have a big, now we are working on the issue of corporate governance in the private sector, but not exclusively. So this is also accession, as part of accession to OECD for Ukraine. We have to adhere the recommendations, and this project of the law says that we should cancel the commercial code and that we have, and it's quite Soviet, and implement the modern and market-oriented approaches in our regulation for our corporate governance system. The third is public procurement reform. We do have ProZorro system, but it's far away from good system and from good public procurement model. And it's not about the IT element itself. It's first of all about the regulation in general. And what Katerina said about the state audit service and other organizations that are responsible for this, they are key for the good procurement system. So we will adopt new law on public procurement as part of our conditionalities. We should adopt tax reform, and when I speak about tax reform, it's about the fiscal discipline, about the customs reform, about excise tax reform, and now we are doing this in order to raise more money into the state budget. Economic Security Bureau reboot is a well-known reform that will change the key economic law enforcement agency. ARMA reform is a long-lasting reform, actually, that we are focusing the last time, and as part of another conditionalities from another partner, we hope that we will adopt the reform and change the approaches of managing the arrested assets. We are doing very well. We are doing privatization. We are making we do have assets to sell for about $1 billion US dollars. It's the state-owned assets. We will continue to do this. Meanwhile, we created the system of selling of sanctioned assets confiscated from Russians. It's also about $1 billion to be sold and to be received. We are going to change the banking sector, the structure of banking sector, because 70% of this is state-owned. It belongs to state-owned banks. So on the agenda of Ukraine is to sell part of state-owned banks and to reduce the amount of non-performing loans in these state-owned banks. The amount of non-performing loans, these are loans that are not paid for a long time, and about 80% of non-performing loans are in the state banks. So it's about the sustainability of the banking sector. So we also will provide the system of public financial reporting and asset management for state-owned property, because it's a huge mess with state-owned enterprises, and we have obligations to make an order there. Public-private partnership, probably somebody has spoken today about this. It's important thing to engage private money for recovery, reconstruction, and development. But actually, dear colleagues, everyone should understand that reforms without security is not possible. We can do any structural and institutional reforms whoever may imagine. If there is no security, if there is no light in Ukraine, if there is no normal conditions for living, there will be no result. So only with security and financial and military aid to Ukraine, we may have good results. Thank you for your patience, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Alexei. And I have nothing more to say to you, dear colleagues and friends, then congratulations. Congratulations to those of you who have survived. We have arrived at the very final stop of our event, and without any further ado, I would like to pass the floor to the president of the German Marshall Fund, Heather Conley.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to try to shoo everybody in here. Come on, everybody. Come in. Come on. I want everyone to stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Come on. Come on. Come on. Can we get the room? Come on, guys. Come on. Everybody in the room, stand up. Are we coming? Come on, everybody. Come on, everybody. All right. I want everyone to get a big round of applause to you. You just took care of 2 very intensive days of discussion. Okay, now you can sit down for 2 seconds because I'm going to be incredibly brief, but I want everybody and the family's going to come in one time. Come on. I love this tradition. I love that at the end of the Ukraine Recovery Conference, we come together as a community to talk. What did we hear? What did we learn? How do we help move things forward in the future? I am so grateful to our co-organizers, our colleagues that put together an amazing panel presentation. I just learned so much just listening here the last hour and a half. Thank you for the richness of the discussion and the panel conversations. Thank you so much to our sponsors, the people who make our work and our research possible. Thank you so much. I have to tell you, I'm rethinking how GMF does conferences in the future. Live music, an open bar? What is this? What is this? I'm liking it. I'm liking it. We may be starting a new tradition here. Where's our Italian colleague? We have some exciting things for 2025. But very, very seriously, I want to leave you with a thought. This is what I learned during the conversation over the last 2 days. I want you to remember 4 G's. No, I'm not telling you what you've got on your cell phone. I'm going to talk about the first 3, and I think this is what summarizes the last 2 days. The first G, guns. We need the defensive capabilities to win this war. That's G number 1. Thank you. And that was very clear, and thank you for your passionate conversations about that. The second G, the grid. We need to get energy back into cities so people can live. So that's the second G, the grid, helping the the grid. The third G is what we just spent several hours talking about, and that is governance. And I love that you called this governance for survival, because in my conversations in the hallways, I was concerned about the fact that senior Ukrainian leadership was not at this conference that held the portfolios for recovery and reconstruction. And in talking with colleagues, I said, well, if we don't win the war, then none of this matters. But we know what we're fighting for, a better future, a democratic future, and that requires strong governance. So we need that 3G. And it doesn't matter who is in those places. We need transparent plans, transparent policies, transparent procedures, processes. That's what good governance is. That's what we're all working for. That's what these presentations said. So thank you so very much. And do you know what the 4th G is? What we heard absolutely in every presentation. The 4th G is grit, courage. Courage to speak out when things need to be said. You are patriotic when you speak out to say when things need to be said. The courage and the strength to keep fighting. The strength to know that there is a better day ahead. And I hope for all of our Ukrainian colleagues that you know that we all stand shoulder to shoulder with you, particularly at this difficult time. It takes a community to work on those 4 Gs. I want to thank my community at GMF, my colleagues, Thomas Klein-Bruckhoff, Josh Rudolph, the entire team. Would you please wave your arms if you're from Team GMF and say thank them, please. Thank you so much to our incredible partners, again, who made this possible. I want you to, again, stand back up again. You got to get the blood circulating again. Because I think we have some music coming, right? Right. We're coming. I want us right now to celebrate that we're with each other, to celebrate strength, courage, commitment, to celebrate Ukraine. Slava Ukraini. Thank you all.
finished with, I will give my voice to Serhiy Zhadan. With Serhiy, we have been traveling in 2014 to Mariupol, Bakhmut, Konstantinivka, Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, and we've been singing for the people. And Serhiy wrote the poem, and I wrote music. And sometimes you sing for to give the sorrow get away, and you sing for to kick off the evil, which is Russian Imperium. And we need for that Taurus and all other weapons. Where are you from? Black caravan, you flock of birds. Where are you from? Звідки ти, чорна валко, пташина зграє? Звідки ти? We once lived in the city that no longer exists. Where are you from? We once lived in the city that no longer exists. Where are you from? We have come here, tired and ready to submit. Could you tell your people there is nobody left to kill? We have come here, tired and ready to submit. Could you tell your people there is nobody left? Наше місто було з каменю і з заліза. В кожного в нас тепер в руці дорожня валіза. Наше місто було із каменю і з заліза. І в кожного з нас тепер в руці дорожня валіза. В кожній валізі попіл зібраний під прицілом. І тепер навіть в наших снах пахне горілим. В кожній валізі попіл зібраний під прицілом. Тепер навіть в наших снах. Ах, жінки, в нашому місті були дзвінки, безтурботні, а їхні пальці вночі торкались безсотні. Жінки в нашому місті були дзвінки, ах, безтурботні, а їхні пальці вночі наче жили, церкви були просторі, джерела в місті були глибокі, наче жили, церкви були просторі. Where are you from? Звідки ти? Where are you from? Слава Україні! We can recover the country. We cannot rebuild everyone who gives now the soul and body to fight against this evil. We will now finish with our set, during that you welcome to join your beautiful dinner. It's not enough to stand with Ukraine. Let's win with Ukraine.